Welcome to Giant Mess, a super sloppy sports and entertainment podcast that's hosted by a giant mess. That's me, the real cinch, Neal Lynch. I'm a single dad who loves to talk Giants football, Mets baseball, movies, and TV. Also like to mix in some funny stories and life lessons along the way. On today's episode, we're going to be breaking down, recapping, and reviewing the New York Football Giants' loss to the New Orleans Saints, 26-14. A game they couldn't afford to lose. The only game on the schedule that we pointed to and said that's an automatic W, and the Giants lost. So we'll go over that, and then we'll also preview the Thursday night football matchup in Week 6 against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm sure that will be fun. So without further ado, let's get started up in y'all. All right, I didn't want to lead with this, but it's funny that the Carolina Panthers have struggled to the point where the team is no longer doing a podcast, or Carolina Panthers podcasters are no longer podcasting about the Panthers because they stink so much. And yet we are worse than the Panthers. And I'm still here, still casting, still podding. They said, hey, listen, our team stinks so much that we want to spend time with our family, our families. We don't think it's worth our time or effort to cover them anymore, which is wild because at least they're showing fight and at least they're not completely in the dumps. Whereas the Giants, it's been a long time since we've felt really good about the team. Not just like 2016 good where it was kind of iffy, or 2022 good where it was kind of iffy. It's just like we have not had a dominant team in a very long time. I mean, even going back to the Coughlin years when we won the 2 Super Bowls, it's like we weren't steamrolling. That 2008 team was fucking awesome and we couldn't do shit. So, am I going to quit podcasting? I might have to pretty soon if the unemployment continues down this track. 15 months and counting. Kind of need income to do the podcasting, and the podcasting's not producing income. Am I blaming the Giants for my failures in life? Yes. Coming into this game, I said, and I think a lot of people said, you cannot afford to lose this game. You just can't. You built up so much good energy, good vibes, good mojo. You built up a lot of great feelings and momentum after beating the Chargers. And now you see why we beat the Chargers. The Chargers are just across the board getting decimated by injury. And so they're in a little bit of a tailspin just because of the mounting injuries on their side. You beat an undefeated team. Pretty huge. We all said it was one of the biggest wins in the Brian Daboll era. That's for sure. I would say maybe the biggest win. That's where I put it on the list. I was going to put out a list of like the top 5, top 6 wins in his reign of terror as Giants head coach. And I think the Chargers one was number 1 just because of what adversity we were facing, dire straits, where we are talent-wise, personnel-wise, versus a Chargers team that is just far superior. And we said, this is how you change the culture. This is how you change the organization's outlook, get the players on board, and you came out and laid an absolute fucking dud against the winless Saints. I saw a clip from Big Blue VCR on X. I love seeing the clips that Big Blue VCR puts out. He basically, before the week leading up to the game, will put out a bunch of clips from yesteryear, from previous years between the two teams that are going to square off. So this week leading up to the Saints game, it's all the historical Giants versus Saints clips. And I completely forgot about this. I don't know. I'm not completely sure why. 1997 Giants under Jim Fossil, first year, started the season 1-3. I totally forgot we started 1-3. We led off the season with a big win over the Eagles. We then got blown out by Tom Coughlin's Jacksonville Jaguars. We had a 1-point loss to the Ravens, who were in their second year of existence. And then we had a pretty bad 10-point loss to the Rams in St. Louis. Then we come up against the Saints. in week 5 of 1997 season. And this is a home game. We ended up beating the Saints 14-9. Saints at that time coached by Mike Ditka. We then went on a 5-game winning streak and won the NFC East title at 10-5-1. We beat the Cowboys by 3. The Cardinals in Arizona. We had an overtime win against the Lions in Detroit. A 2-point win over the Bengals at home against Jeff Blake, who I was kind of obsessed with because of his, he was doing the moon ball before Russell Wilson was doing the moon ball. Then we had a tough loss to the Tennessee Oilers. 10-6. We win against the Cardinals. We tie Washington, which that was, you want to talk about ties leaving you feeling gross? Not a big fan of ties. They're better than losses, but my God, it feels like coulda, woulda, shoulda times a million. We tied Washington, and that's the infamous Gus Frerotte headbutting the wall at Giant Stadium. Was it Giant Stadium or is it in Washington? I don't remember, but he just scored a touchdown and immediately headbutted the wall, and I think he was done for the game, maybe the season. And then we had a tough loss to the Buccaneers, a playoff team. We beat the Eagles in Philly, beat Washington at home, and then beat the Cowboys on the road. And then we hosted the Vikings in the wild card, led 19-3 at halftime. And it was 22-13 with around 2 minutes to play, less than 2 minutes to play, when Randall Cunningham threw that 30-yard touchdown pass to Jake Reed, making it 22-20 with under 2 to play. Onside kick by the Vikings. They recover it. There's a defensive pass interference on Philippi Sparks to set up the Vikings in field goal range. They hit the game-winning field goal with 10 seconds left. We lose by 1. Vikings went on to get smoked by the Niners, and then San Fran got crushed by the Packers. In reality, in the alternate reality, where we actually hold on to the win, we would have gone, the Buccaneers would have played at San Francisco, and then we would have played at Green Bay, who represented the NFC in the Super Bowl that year. So we probably would have got our doors blown off in Green Bay. If we're being honest. Our offense was not all that great. Our defense was awesome, but I don't see us upsetting the Packers in Green Bay. So I saw that, and I allowed myself to believe. I was like, whoa. Are we currently, the 2025 Giants, are we the 1997 Giants, where we have a good defense, kinda, or we should have a much better defense than we actually do, and we have an offense that's like, we can run the ball, we won't cost us games, but we're not going to necessarily win the games. We're just going to manage the games when we have a lead. Like, let's get a lead and keep the lead. That was the formula in 1997, and that feels like maybe that could have been the formula in 2025. We also had that famous game 10 years ago. Can't believe it's been 10 years since that happened. Holy smokes. I had just proposed to my girlfriend like a few weeks earlier down in Nashville, Tennessee. She said, yeah, but here I am 10 years later, divorced, shared custody. Awesome. But I remember watching that game at StreamCon at the Javits Center in New York City for work. I had to go work an event and set up this really just crappy booth that no one visited. Had to that was just a waste of my time. And then having to watch that or following it and seeing the wild insanity that was going down in New Orleans when Drew Brees threw 7 touchdowns. Eli had 6 touchdowns. OBJ hit the Michael Jackson celebration. Game that we could have won, probably, if special teams or defense comes up big. And we didn't. Dan Duggan had some really interesting pregame thoughts. Giants haven't had a winning streak since Tommy DeVito won 3 in a row from weeks 11 to 14 in 2023. Oh my God. Daboll only has 3 winning streaks in his 3+ seasons, weeks 1 and 2 in 2022 and weeks 4 through 7 in 2022. Saints defense isn't good, but the pass defense is much worse than the run defense. So you would think that Jaxson Dart would be able to take advantage of that. And we said with no Malik Neighbors, Jaxson Dart and Cam Skattebo would expect to lean into the run game, and Saints would load up the box. Would that allow for Dart to air it out? So he expected a lot of Dart runs. Again, not expecting many slides. He was wrong on that account. Giants will continue the up-tempo, no-huddle offense. Don't expect a huge role for Jalen Hyatt today. He'll rotate with Bo Collins. Expect Collins to get more snaps at wide receiver 3. They both got pretty much similar amount of snaps and didn't do jack squat with their opportunities. With Hyatt, it's like, okay, I get it. With Collins, it's like, bro, what? I mean, you weren't even you were from day one almost like a practice squad guy. You have a pretty good preseason where it's like, whoa, we might have something here, and then you just failed to show up in the team's time of need. Bo Collins did not show up. We also needed Darius Slayton to step up. He didn't step up. Wan'Dale Robinson, this is your time to shine. Where the hell were you? Again, I don't think we schemed. We had a great scheme for Wan'Dale Robinson yet again. It's like these bubble screens and these short ass passes that don't go anywhere, where it's literally why he had 90 plus catches last year in less than 700 or 800 yards. It's just like you're going to get maybe 4 or 5 yards of catch out of him. It's like, big opportunity to contract year for Wan'Dale Robinson. Would you bring back Wan'Dale Robinson? I think you know my answer to that. That's a hell no, bro. But that's if you're on a normal team. You're on a Giants team that you can see when Malik Neighbors is out, there's nothing there, which is wild considering like I just talked about one of the Giants' biggest wins coming over the Packers in London when we didn't really have like our wide receiving core that day was Slayton and I don't even know if Wan'Dale was playing, and we won that game. So again, it's personnel not getting open on their own, and then the offensive play callers, Daboll and Kafka, not designing a scheme to get them open. And then when they get open, they either drop the ball or Dart misses the throw. This is the type of matchup you have: a number 3 pick, a number 5 pick, a $28 million edge rusher, and a $22 million nose tackle to dominate. Ooh, a shaky young quarterback in Spencer Rattler, a shaky young offensive line for the Saints offensive line. The front four should feast, and they didn't really. I didn't think Spencer Rattler's disguised coverage comment was a big deal. He was just giving an overview of the Giants' defense, and what he said was objectively true. Maybe Shane Bowen will throw more at a young quarterback than he has against some of the stud veterans they've faced, but I don't think he can get too exotic with his personnel, especially with Cordell Flott, Deonte Banks rotation, which will continue today, which everyone is saying that's a huge mistake. Giants lose today will be because of the run defense. Don't expect the Saints to have the same head-scratching, pass-heavy game plan as the Chargers last week. Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller is a solid 1-2 punch. Real test for the Giants' weakness. Turns out, running game wasn't a problem for us. It was our pass defense yet again. Giants were able to survive a close game last week against the Chargers without any pressure kicks for Jude McAtemney. That's likely to change. Big opportunity for the young kicker, and he didn't get any opportunities. Dan Duggan's prediction was Giants 20, Saints 16, expecting it to be an ugly game. It was. Giants front four gives them the advantage to pull it out. They didn't. This is the first time Dan Duggan picked the Giants victory since week 10 last season against Carolina when we lost to the Panthers in overtime. I didn't know if I wanted to lead with this, but I am done defending Darius Slayton. Giants Muse posted that Darius Slayton is on the cusp of surpassing Sterling Shepard in terms of total receiving yards for Giants wide receivers. Shep is at a little over 4,000 at 4,095 receiving yards. Darius Slayton's at 4,032. I don't think he eclipsed that in this game. Many are saying this was his worst game in a Giants uniform. And I will go so far. I'll be a little over dramatic. I'll embellish. Why not? I think you've seen the last of Darius Slayton in a Giants uniform this season. I think this season is it for him. You can't give someone 3 years, $12 million a year after you didn't give it to Saquon Barkley. You didn't give it to Xavier McKinney. You didn't give it to Julian Love. You can't give that kind of money to him, see the rest of that contract out. So, and here's what stinks is, and it falls back on Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll. I hate, obviously people have their thoughts about the ownership in the front office, and it's like, I don't, barring like a coup where we all get pitchforks and torches and storm MetLife Stadium facilities and like hold them hostage until they all resign. Huh. The next best thing is getting rid of Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, and Darius Slayton is now a prime example why they both should be gone. And it's just the last in a lineage of bad decisions by these two. You didn't think Saquon had it anymore. Didn't give him the money that you gave to Slayton, who's not a wide receiver one. I, for years, have been saying, oh, he's wide receiver one. He can do it. He can do it. He can do it. Now he's not even a wide receiver two. He'll most likely end up a wide receiver three somewhere. It sucks because I had so much confidence in him. I was defending him left and right. Outspoken, confident. They made him a fucking captain this year, which is just unreal. Paying him $12 million, and you have to pay him a lot of money next year, and he's just not worth it. I thought maybe he could overcome the drops, overcome the fumbles, overcome a coaching staff that just has not figured out how to get him the ball. But yet they get him the ball, he drops it or he fumbles it. So yeah, I mean, barring like some crazy redemption arc story where he just comes out and just blows everyone away. I mean, he now has a hamstring issue, but so he missed most of not most, but he missed a good chunk of the fourth quarter when we needed him most. It's like that would have been nice if he could bounce back and make some plays in the fourth quarter to get us back in the game. And instead, I think he tweaked his hamstring trying to chase down the Saints defender on Cam Skattebo fumble return for a touchdown. So it's always like the returns. Blocked kick, return for a touchdown in the opener against Dallas where Andrew Thomas hurt himself. Then you had like the kick return against Washington where Gano hurt himself. And now you got Slayton hurting himself on a fumble return for a touchdown. So it's always the returns that we seem to be hurting ourselves. It's official. Yeah, it's official. There have been too many times we point to Slayton and we say, wow, this is the guy. This is the guy. This is the guy. Because he's shown you the potential. And then he just has not. I mean, we're in year what with him now? 6? 7? It's the 7th season? 6th or 7th season? It's like, dude, step it up or step out. Lawrence Tynes at LT4Kicks, former Giants kicker, on X, said Slayton can easily be a 1,000-yard plus type of receiver for the Giants team. Obviously missed a talent like Neighbors, but I have a lot of confidence in Darius and his ability to produce big plays. Yeah, I mean, and they even put up some stats, when Neighbors was down last year, what he was able to accomplish. And no more, dude. Now we're in prove it territory. We were in that weird debate zone where it's like you have defenders and you have proponents, but I think everyone has kind of jumped over to the side where it's like, now you got to prove it. Now you have to win us back. Giants only had 5 active wide receivers in this game, 2 of them being Jalen Hyatt and Gunnar Olszewski. 4 tight ends, okay, and only 2 running backs active. Again, personnel decision-making, kind of weird. My guess there is, I don't know. Manhurts is your best blocking tight end. You know that you have to get Bellinger more involved in the offense. Theo's according to the coaching staff, he's got the most snap counts of the 3. And then I guess they activated Thomas Fidone. Didn't see him on the field at all. So kind of odd. In terms of team stats, we had more first downs than New Orleans. We had more rushing yards, 136 rushing yards on 29 attempts. We didn't sack Spencer Rattler. Kind of crazy. Total yards were about even. We lost the 3 fumbles, and Dart had the 2 picks. Saints scored, I want to say, 13 points. off turnovers, Giants turnovers. So you do the math. 26 minus 13 is 13. We had 14. You don't turn the ball over, you probably win the game. So was it the Saints winning or was it the Giants losing? I think it was the Giants losing. We had 8 penalties accepted against us for 95 yards. Saints had 7 for 43 yards. We were 3 of 10 on third down. Saints were 7 of 15 on third down. We were 3 for 5 on fourth down. Saints were 1 for 1. And we won the time of possession battle. Anthony Rivardo at Anthony_Rivardo on X said the Giants have had 43 penalties called against them through 5 games this season, the second most in the National Football League. Their 415 penalty yards against lead the league. Giants are an undisciplined, poorly coached football team, and I wholeheartedly agree. I don't know if I have the stats here. I probably have them a little bit down further, but the penalties have been increasing with each year that we have Daboll as head coach. That's not a good trend. You want it going the other way. You want less penalties per season the longer you go on and coach the team. Our passing offense was abominable. It was negative 12.52 expected points contributed. And our pass defense was just as bad, if not worse, negative 16.54 expected points contributed. On offense, the Giants scored touchdowns on the first 2 possessions for the first time since 2020. Giants were last in the NFL in red zone scoring before this week, converting just 26.7% of their attempts into touchdowns. We didn't jump up that much after this week, but we converted our first 2 in New Orleans before our third trip in the red zone ended with Skattebo fumbling. On first and goal on the 1-yard line, Jaxson Dart threw a touchdown pass to Theo Johnson. Nice play action that drew in the linebackers. Theo was kind of posted up in the back towards the back of the end zone. Good throw by Dart to get over the linebackers, knowing that Theo's got the height advantage. We go up 7-0, and it's like, holy guacamole, dude. Another touchdown on our opening drive. That's what I'm talking about. On another drive, I think it was the ensuing drive, Dart evaded pressure, scrambled around, moved around, didn't panic, bought some time, saw a lane to run, and took it. Got 20 yards on the scramble in the first quarter as the first quarter came to an end. And he slid. We have like a new Jaxson Dart slide alert. It's like if you're a Mets fan during 2022, the Mets like led the league in getting hit by pitches. And SNY eventually turned into a funny thing where it's like an alarm would go off and they'd cut to Buck and Buck would be all pissed. Feels like we should have that for Jaxson Dart and his slides. Like, we got a Jaxson Dart slide. It's like, this is how pathetic and sad the Giants are, is that we are cheering our quarterback sliding. It's the little things, you know? Really impressed with Jaxson Dart on this play and for most of the first half. Where the hell did that go in the second half? I have no idea. You know, end of the first quarter, it's 3rd and 7 from the 15. Dart throws a dart to Theo, running up the seam, and catches it right at the goal line. He was split left. Theo was split left. Runs past the linebacker, and he gets inside leverage on, I think it was the safety or the corner was playing off. And Dart had a strong throw, not perfect, but it was a tight window to fit in, and Theo made a great catch. And, we go up 14-3 at the beginning of the second quarter. Dugout Analytics said the Giants have used 2 or more tight ends on 15 of 16 plays. The tight ends accounted for 5 of 8 catches and both touchdowns. 63% of catches went to tight ends, and I was loving it. I was lapping it up. Daniel Bellinger had more catches in this first half than he had all season. And it was like, all right, we're getting back to what Giants fans loved and appreciated when we had so much success in 2022. Get the ball to our tight ends and let them make plays. Pat Leonard says it's the first time in 5 years that the Giants have scored a touchdown in each of their first 2 offensive drives in a game per NFL on CBS. Last time was November 15th, 2020 versus the Eagles, when Daniel Jones and Wayne Gallman scored those 2 touchdowns for Joe Judge's Giants in a 27-17 win. Remember that? Remember when we beat the Eagles? Oh man, that was so cool. We're going to get into some other stats like biggest comebacks and blown leads. That 2020 team When you look back years from now at the 2020 team, you see, 6 wins and 10 losses and second place. And it's like, missed the playoffs. Ugh. But it's like so close to being a playoff, not just a playoff team, but a really good team. And you wonder how things would have panned out differently if Judge actually made the playoffs and actually got a lot of the wins that he ended up blowing in that season. In the second quarter, with under 6 minutes to play, 4th and 4 from the New Orleans 48-yard line. We are up 14-6. What do you do? What do you do? Analytics says, I believe you go for it. I think you have pretty much 100% of Giants fans screaming, go for it. And instead, we send out Jamie Gillen to punt. He punts 35 yards. We get a fair catch from Rashid Shaheed at the Saints 13. And what do the Saints do on 1st and 10? The very first play of that drive from their own 13, down 14-6. They dial up a deep pass from Spencer Rattler to Rashid Shaheed, and he takes it to the house. M-I-A, take it to the house. What y'all sing? Take it to the house. Take it to the house. Take it to the house. Just absolutely flaming Tyler Nubin, running straight past him, and you're not going to catch Rashid Shaheed. So 87-yard touchdown. It's now 14-13. Oh. So what looked like early on, we're going to run away with this thing. And I think I even posted on X, I said, 5 quarters, we're looking like a really good football team. We're doing the things that are productive, successful. It's just like we look good. And then from the moment that we didn't go for it on 4th and 4, and I bring this up because there are people, people are saying fire Brian Daboll, and then you have people saying, well, this game's not on Brian Daboll. This game's not on Joe Schoen. This is on the players. Agree. The players take a really large chunk of the responsibility for this loss, and they need to be held accountable. I am still putting a lot of blame on Joe Schoen for getting us into this cap situation, because the cap situation, even though we've seen multiple other teams like the Saints and Eagles finagle and finesse the cap in order to sign guys mid-season, late season that can be at least, maybe not difference makers, but at least stop the bleeding, plug the leak, plug the dam, if you will. We're in cap space we've had cap space problems. Like, yes, we had them with Gettleman, but I don't know that they've gotten necessarily all that much better with Joe Schoen. He has shown an inability to figure out the salary cap. Again, 3 years, $36 million for Darius Slayton, who hasn't done anything for you, and you put a C on his chest. Brian Daboll not going for it on 4th and 4 in Saints territory. When you're up 14-6 and you're feeling pretty good about your offense, offense just scored 2 touchdowns on their first 2 drives. What are you doing? And that's not the first 4th down that he didn't go for it. There's another one that we'll get to. But we have a little less than 3 minutes left in the first half. It's 3rd and 2. We're up by 1. The Giants dialed up a flea flicker on 3rd and 2 from near midfield. Dart handed the ball off to Skattebo, who pitched it back to the quarterback. However, Dart was unable to hook up with Slayton for a potential touchdown and a pass that they both would like back, and that's 1,000%. It just didn't look right from the beginning. It just looked janky. Did not look smooth at all. And Dart hesitated, didn't pull the trigger at first, which cost him. And people are blaming Dart because it was severely underthrown. I mean, Slayton had his guy beat by a good 10 yards or more. And it's like, if that's Josh Allen, if that's Mahomes, if that's Herbert, if that's a lot Burrow, if it's a lot of other quarterbacks, that's a touchdown. But it's Jaxson Dart, second start of his career, 22 years old, youngest quarterback in the NFL. He clutches. And the reason why he hesitated and clutched, I think, is what Art Stapleton is saying here. Timing was off on that flea flicker because Greg Van Roten was knocked back into the pocket, affecting Skattebo's flip to Dart. Go back and watch the play, and he's right. Van Roten got blown up, and it caused just a little bit of a hitch, a glitch in that whole execution. If he doesn't get blown up, maybe Skattebo is able to get another step or two, really draw on the defense even more, and execute a quicker, crisper flick back to Dart, who then doesn't have to concern himself about not just Van Roten being in his fucking grill, but Skattebo also being in the mix. So he had two people that were kind of not giving him the space to really step into the throw and nail it. So Greg Van Roten, again, starting at guard because Evan Neal is a healthy scratch yet again. Has he suited up this year? I don't think so. Evan Neal, the guy that Joe Schoen drafted, and the guy that neither Daboll, no Brasillo, nor anyone can get to play well enough to beat out Greg Van Roten, who is in the twilight of his career. Probably going to retire soon. So what do we do after we miss that deep shot flea flicker? You figure, 3rd and 2, we're in Saints territory. They went for the deep shot because they know they're going to go for it on 4th down. So now we come to 4th down. It's 4th and 2, a little under 3 minutes to play. Second quarter, we're up by 1. We're at our 48. We try to draw the Saints off sides. Ew. We then let the clock run out, penalty on us, delay a game 5 yards, and we punt it. Saints, next possession, take the ball all the way down to the field goal range, and they miss it. So they gave us another opportunity to come back and actually do something with some time left on the clock in the first half. But yet again, why not go for it there? You didn't go for it on 4th and 4. Okay, maybe 4 yards is a little bit of a stretch. You don't go for it on 4th and 2? I mean, those are 2 4th downs. And again, the play before the 4th and 4, I don't know if I have it here, but it's like, why would you call that play? Why would you run that play short of the sticks if you're not planning to go for it on 4th down? Like, and that's why Brian Daboll shouldn't be our head coach. He just shouldn't, because those decisions matter and affect the outcome of the game, the trajectory of the game, the momentum of the game. You had 2 opportunities to stick it to New Orleans and put the fucking pedal to the metal, apply the pressure, and if you score, even if you get a field goal there on the first 4th down, that if you convert, you're up 17-3. Defense probably feels a little bit better about themselves. You know, Saints are probably getting down on themselves. Even on the next one, it's 14-13. You're trying to prevent the Saints from really seizing the momentum and running with it, and you give the ball back to them. You know, they should have scored 3 there, and then they end up coming back and getting a field goal anyway at the end of the half. Dan Schneider said Daboll is calling the game like his defense is dominating, and on paper they should be. The one issue is they're not. Tons of penalties and Saints getting the ball out fast and finding solutions. 2 punts around midfield with short to-go situations. Okay, sure. You want to make that argument that Daboll has confidence in his defense to come up and play well because they should against the Saints offense that smells. Okay, but you also need to have a little more confidence in your offense that has played well. Like, it's one thing if you came out the first 2 drives and you don't do shit, or you get 2 field goals and it's 6-3. You're like, maybe this is a defensive battle and I believe in our defense. You're up 14-3. And then the second time, it's just like inexcusable. Just go for it, dude. That's just a lack of confidence. It's a lack of confidence in your offense, which means it's a lack of confidence in your own coaching abilities. You can say it's a lack of confidence in the players, but we're in year 4 of this bullshit, dude. So second quarter, minute 13 left, 1st and 10, we're in Saints territory again. We're up by 1. I mean, puts it right on Darius Slayton. Great throw on an in route, slant route. Slayton for 9 yards. Slayton gets hit again. Ball comes out. Demario Davis punches the ball out. Slayton fumbles. It's recovered by Jonas Sanker at the New Orleans 32, who then returns at 27 yards. And that's when people went headhunting on X. People were like, all right, now it's time that we all just shit all over Darius Slayton. Marshall Green, the Giants gave Darius Slayton the money over Saquon Barkley. Again, what? Saquon Barkley is going to be a Hall of Famer. Darius Slayton might not even get in the Giants Hall of Fame or Ring of Honor or anything like that. Tommy Smokes from Barstool at Tom Scabelli said, I can't believe the Giants gave Slayton $36 million this offseason. Unfathomable move. Fantasy Football Anonymous at Fantasy Anonai said, oh, and FYI, Joe Schoen chose to pay Darius Slayton over Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney. Must be Daniel Jones' fault. Yeah, I mean, Schoen also decided to reward to go with Jones and not Barkley. And again, is that if you're an avid Schoen loyalist and you want to say that, oh, well, he was in salary cap hell, the team and organization was in salary cap hell after Gettleman handed out that fucking contract to Galladay and Solder and all these other free agents that he whiffed on, Bradbury, Blake Martinez, if you want to say that, okay, fine. But you gave the money to Daniel and then you didn't do anything to help Daniel. You rolled with the same exact fucking offensive line that ended up getting him killed in 2023. And then you wondered why he didn't play well in 2024. At Skattebo Dart said, how you choose to let guys like Xavier McKinney, Julian Love, and Leonard Williams go, but pay Darius Slayton is wild. Williams, I could understand to a certain degree. You're paying Williams top 5. I mean, he was one of the highest paid defensive linemen in the NFL. But in terms of like sacks, wasn't quite there. Like, is Leonard Williams as good as Dexter Lawrence? No. He was earning a lot of money. So I don't mind Leonard Williams so much. If the plan was to find a better, more affordable replacement who can get you similar production, but not at that cost. So I don't hate the Leonard Williams move. I do hate letting McKinney and Love go, thinking that you got something in Tyler Nubin and Jason Pinnock. And then you have to course correct from whiffing on that decision by handing a lot of money to Javon Holland, who hasn't done shit. There was a poll I just saw on X, like, would you fire Schoen midseason or even after the season? It was like 83% yes. To the 10% saying no, don't fire him. What? What has led you to believe that it's a combination of, if he picks the right personnel, the coaching staff fucks him up. If he picks the wrong personnel, the coaching staff can't coach them up. You're screwed with both of these guys. And the idea that you're going to bring in another head coach, yes, if you gun to your head, you have to pick one, it's Daboll. But, I don't know that Schoen has really shown me that much. I mean, is he better than Gettleman? In the first half, Jaxson Dart was 11 of 16 for 110 yards, passing yards, 38 rushing yards, 2 passing touchdowns for 127.6 passer rating, and it all fell apart in the second half. It's ironic that in this graphic that I copied and pasted, it shows him running and you can see the ground underneath him cracking, as if like, oh, he's causing the ground to crack. And it's like, no, the ground is falling away from him. Like he's about to fall into the abyss. In the second half, 4th and 1, we're down by 2, which it's insane that we're even losing in this game at this point. We have the ball to start the second half. Wan'Dale Robinson goes around the left end for 2 yards to get the first down. Cam Skattebo had a hellacious pancake that he put on a guy that was way bigger than him. I don't think it was Cameron Jordan, but it's a guy that's like 6'4", 6'5", 250, 260, 270 maybe. Skattebo's like 5'10", 230 or something like that, and he just planted him. Put his head right in his chest and planted him. You love the way that Cam runs, but like I mentioned this last week, he's also been lights out blocking. So it gets my wheels turning, as I'm a more offensive oriented type mind, and it's like, ooh, if we get Tyrone Tracy back, do you see a situation where Cam could actually be elite? You can have the both of them in the game, which I've already proposed and want desperately. Whether that's Cam as the sole back, Tyrone Tracy split out wide or in the wing, whether that's the both of them in the backfield and Cam's lead blocker. Like you hope that the offense opens up a little bit more and they get a little more creative when Tracy comes back, whenever he does come back. And then 1st and 10, 11 minutes to play. We're in Saints territory again. We're at the 43 of New Orleans, down by 2, and then Dart scrambles and just completely untouched loses the ball. And it gets recovered by Cam Jordan at the Saints 46. It kind of started towards the end of that second quarter, the wheels coming off, and then this is when it completely, utterly went downhill. We got the ball back with A little under 7 minutes left in the third quarter. All right. Defense makes a stop, only gives up the field goal. It's 19-14. 1st and 10 from our 31. Skattebo up the middle for 8 yards. 2nd and 2. Skattebo up the middle for 3 yards. First down. 1st and 10 from the 42. Dart tries to scramble up the middle, gets a yard. 2nd and 9 from our 43. Skattebo right tackle for 2 yards. 3rd and 7. This is huge. We're putting together a drive. Crucial third down. 3rd and 7. We're at a 45. We're down by 5. Dart passes short left to Bellinger, who gets the first down for 12 yards. Awesome. 1st and 10 from the 43 of the Saints. We're in Saints territory again. Skattebo left end for 2 yards. 2nd and 8 at the 41. Skattebo right guard for 5 yards. 3rd and 3 from the New Orleans 36. Dart up the middle for 10 yards. 1st and 10. Devin Singletary left end for 4 yards. 2nd and 6. Dart passes complete short right to Skattebo for 7 yards. First down. We now have 42 seconds left in the third quarter. We've put together a 6-minute drive. Big conversions. Nothing too flashy or explosive, but being productive, moving the ball down the field. It's 1st and 10, 42 seconds left. From the New Orleans 15, we're down by 5. Dart passes complete short left to Theo Johnson for 3 yards. It's now 2nd and 7. We let the clock run out in the third quarter. That's a coaching decision, is it not? Why wouldn't you, when you have momentum going, it's now back in your favor, you're putting together a really great, gritty, gutsy drive, churning it out, first downs here and there. No real big plays, but you're getting enough to get first downs, right? You're moving down the field, marching down the field. Time is running out in the third quarter, and you decide, let's take a break. The Saints are on their heels. We're on their 12-yard line. Yeah, let's take a break. Fourth quarter starts. You flip the field. We're on the Saints 12. We hand off to Cam Skattebo. He goes up the middle, fumbles the ball, recovered by the Saints, who take it all the way back and score. 86 yards for the touchdown. It's now, with the extra point, 26-14. And that is when I would normally say if Russell Wilson was at quarterback, Drew Lock. There have been a lot of games where we'd gotten down multiple scores in the past, and I thought, I can turn this off, rest my eyes, turn my brain off, and not have to worry and watch this anymore. To be honest, I turned it off a little bit. I was like, fuck this. And I was like, you know what? No, what am I doing? We have an entire quarter to come back. 12 points. We scored 2 touchdowns on 2 drives earlier in the game. Who's to say that we can't do that again in the fourth quarter? So I turned it back on. One of the few times as an adult that I've turned off the game and been like, fuck that, I'm not watching anymore, and then turned it back on. As a kid, I would do that a lot. As an adult, never did that. And I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to turn it back on. Because I don't think Dart's, let's see what Dart has. Let's see what Skattebo has. Let's see how Skattebo responds. Let's see how Dart responds. Let's see how this offense responds. And they did not respond well. Dan Schneider said the Giants burned 26 seconds of game clock to run out the third quarter so they can call another 2nd and long run call. And it's fumble number 3, a 10-point swing momentum minimum. Common theme to run clock, play slow when trailing in second halves. Time likely to run out on any comeback attempts. Yeah, you're up 19-14. Okay, I guess I don't hate it. I'd still like you to see you just keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, because it feels like, you got something. Quarter ends, you give the defense a breather. They get a chance to go to the sideline. They get a chance to talk with their coaches and be like, here's what we're seeing. Here's how it could adjust. You gave them that opportunity to do that when you let the clock run out, when you had time to run another play or 2, and instead you come out of the start of the fourth quarter handing it off to Skattebo, who's they've already seen that and they're adjusted to it and they're stopping it. And that's what ends up happening. So, yeah, sure, Skattebo shouldn't fumble the ball. Brian Daboll should be better and smarter in that position. This is year 4 of being a head coach. Year 4 being it's not like he's never been in these situations before. 4th and 4 from near midfield, you punt. 4th and 2 from near midfield, you try and draw them off sides and then you punt. end of the third quarter where it's like you finally have seized back the momentum after you let the lead slip away. One of the biggest blown leads, by the way, in Giants franchise history, a little known fact that we'll get into later. And you don't capitalize on what is, you're finally turning the tables back in your favor, and you let the clock run out, and then you come out on a 2nd and 7 and call that run play. So we're down 26-14. We're down 12 points. We're down 2 touchdowns. In the past, like I said, probably would give up, turn off the game for good, but I turn it back on because I was like, you know what? Who knows how Jaxson Dart responds, how this team responds with Jaxson Dart, with Skattebo. It's like maybe this is a different era. And I look around the league, and it's not unreasonable to think that you're down by multiple scores, you can't come back and win. The Tennessee Titans were down 21-6 in Arizona, 15 points after 3 quarters. Cardinals running back rips off a long run, does the Deshaun Jackson dropping the ball before the goal line. Would have been a sure touchdown. No touchdown. Titans drive, get a score. Next drive, Titans driving again. They're in Cardinals territory. Cardinals intercept the ball. They then fumble it. Titans score a touchdown. Titans win 22-21. Last second field goal. Broncos in Philly were down 17-3, 14 points after 3 quarters. They score 18 in the 4th and win 21-17. Seahawks down 13-0 and almost come back to beat the Buccaneers. Lost on a last second field goal, 38-35. Panthers, nobody wants to podcast about. I'll fucking podcast about them. They were down 17-0 and beat the Dolphins 27-24. Again, it's the Dolphins. I get it. It's the Cardinals. I get it. But the Eagles. So what was the message that Brian Daboll had and the coaching staff had for their players when they're down 26-14 and you just had a huge play go against you where you're driving, it looks like you're either going to take the lead or at least chip away at it? I wouldn't be too angry if we're at the New Orleans 12 and we can't advance any further and we kick the field goal there and we're now down 19-17. Because if the defense can hold, then you can come down and win on a field goal. So I'm not against kicking a field goal there if we're stuck at the New Orleans 12. Now you get to the New Orleans inside the 5, I feel like you got to go for it there. But at the 12, if you stall and you kick a field goal, I'm not going to kill you for that. It's 19-17. You get a stop, you come down, you can win the game on a field goal. I'm not going to get on that. 26-14, what's the fucking message with plenty of time left on the clock? We talked about the biggest wins, come from behind wins, comebacks in Giants franchise history. We were down 10 to the Ravens, came back and won. We were down something like 13 or 14 to the Packers in London, came back and won. We were down against the Cardinals and had the biggest comeback in franchise history in 80 some odd years. What was the message from the coaching staff to the players when that happened? When you're down 26-14, did they all completely deflate? Was there no message? What were you saying to the players, and how are the players responding to that? Because from a fan's perspective, watching on TV, not being there, it didn't look like the coaches did shit. They just shook their head and were like, we're going to lose this game. And then that most likely through osmosis transfers to the players. That negativity of like, oh, well, looks like we're not going to win this game, then goes to the players. What are the coaches truly believing in their players to step it up and make a comeback? Because I've been a fan of this team for 4 friggin' decades, as long as I've lived on this goddamn blue marble of ours. There are times, plenty of times over the past, I don't know how many years, without Eli Manning, that I've been like, we're not coming back and winning this game. We just don't have it in us. We're not that kind of team. I had that inkling and that spark after I turned it off. I said, what am I doing? Why am I turning it off? There's a whole lot of game left here to play, even though we look like ass in the second half. And for the latter part of the second quarter, even though we've looked really bad, there's still like an entire quarter of football to play. We still have a few more drives in us. Can the defense step up? Can the offense finally get back in a groove? Was that the message from the coaches? So yeah, sure, the players didn't play well. Drops, fumbles, interceptions. I get it. But it was the lack of motivation, it was the lack of energy, the lack of enthusiasm that is the most damning for Brian Daboll and his coaching staff. That, to me, signals that we're in week 5. This is not a week 16 game where we're out of playoff contention. We're in week 5. We just came off a big win against the Chargers. We have the opportunity to go into a divisional game on a short rest, 2-3. The potential to catch the Eagles off guard, who, are now 4-1, but were undefeated at the time, not looking like Super Bowl type champion level team, to catch them on a short week, to at home. What you're just gonna give up down 12 against the fucking Saints? It's one thing if it's like you're down 12 against one of the better teams in the league and you're like, white flag, throw it in. Against the Saints, who are winless, who you've shown that you can move the ball on, it just looked from everyone on that field like they were just gave the fuck up. I mean, you want to talk about 50 biggest comebacks in franchise history? Fine, let's do it. I mentioned, coming back against the Ravens on October 16th, 2022. We were down 10 points. We come back and win 24-20. Before Daboll's time, the season before, you saw us come back against the Saints in New Orleans. We were down 11. We come back and win 27-21, October 3rd, 2021. So almost 4 years to the day, where you had Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, Kadarius Toney, Darius Slayton, Kenny Golladay. What to me was like it felt like at the time one of our more stacked offenses, and that was the one time when our offense came together like fucking Voltron and everyone was performing and looking good. And I was like, holy shit, we're going to go to the Super Bowl if this is our offense. The first game in the Brian Daboll era, we're down by 13 against the Titans in Tennessee. We come back and win 21-20 on a 2-point conversion to end the game. That London game I mentioned, we're down 14. We come back, win 27-22. Daniel Jones' first career start against the Buccaneers in Tampa, down 18. We come back and win 32-31. Obviously, there's a missed field goal at the end that gave us the win. And then you have the game in Arizona that I mentioned against the Cardinals. We're down 21 friggin' points, and we come back to win 31-28. Now, why did I highlight those? Well, maybe you can put 2 and 2 together. Who was the quarterback for all those comeback wins? Daniel Jones. I'm sure there have been more misses than hits with Daniel Jones when he gets behind, especially towards the latter end of his career. But you could say the same thing about Eli Manning towards the latter end of his stint with the Giants, where like we would get down in 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and we're within a score or two, and he didn't have it. And you could say, put the onus on his supporting cast, which he did not have a great supporting cast in some of those lean years. But you look at, especially 2018 or even 2017, where you have Odell, Shep, Engram, you feel like you have enough weapons there to overcome. But it's crazy to me that we did not put up more of a fight, especially after that touchdown happens, after the Saints return the Skattebo fumble for the touchdown. Say what you will about Deonte Banks, and I will probably agree with you 10 times out of 10. The guy can return kicks. He's shown that. He had a big return, took it back to our 47. So we're already at midfield. There's more than 12 minutes left on the freaking clock. 1st and 10 from the New Orleans 42. False start on Theo Johnson. 2nd and 10. Dart completes the pass to Wan'Dale Robinson for 2 yards. Barf. Wise at the play call. On top of that, Bo Collins gets called for offensive holding. We end up with a little over 10 minutes left. 4th and 6th from the New Orleans 38. Down by 12. Dart decides to get a little crazy, a little kooky, trying to just make a play, and he forces the ball downfield to Jalen Hyatt when it gets intercepted by Kool-Aid at the 5, the Saints 5. By the way, that's a bad play by Kool-Aid. You're by the sideline, you're having to dive for it. Odds are you're probably going out of bounds. You would have got the ball at your own 38. Now you're pinned in at your own 5. So it's a bad play by Kool-Aid. It's the equivalent of an arm punt from Dart I would love to see what the film showed on that. Did Hyatt not make an effort? Were the other people open? Could he have run? It just seemed like that was not the best decision by Dart, but ultimately it's like doesn't, I'm not going to crucify him for it. Monty at Monty Cree52 on X. If you're not willing to play Jalen Hyatt with Malik Neighbors hurt and Darius Slayton playing the worst half of football of his life, then he shouldn't be on the roster. Why is he on the roster? Because general manager Joe Schoen doesn't want to look bad? This goes back to the whole rant I went on last week about this organization caring more about fucking optics and looks and narratives than they do about the product and what's best for the team. Jalen Hyatt, the coaching staff has shown that they want nothing to do with the guy, and he's only getting opportunities and snaps and playing time because 2 of our top guys went down. He gets on the field, did not catch a single pass, played 34 snaps. The one target, I don't even know how many targets he got, but it ends in a pick. There seemed to be some kind of weird interaction with him when Dart scrambles and he gets tackled and he gets up and says something to Hyatt that didn't look too positive. So it's like, why is he on the team? Because Joe Schoen doesn't want to look bad? Newsflash, he already looks bad because of what's happening with Hyatt. So, again, fourth quarter, there's like a little over 5 minutes left in the game. It's 1st and 10. We're at midfield again. We're still down by 12. Jaxson Dart, pass incomplete, deep right, intended for Theo Johnson. Penalty on Jermaine Illuminor for offensive holding, pushes us back 10 to the. So it's now 2nd and 20, which is a position that this is where you start to crumble as an offense, especially with a rookie quarterback, the youngest in the league. 2nd and 20 from our own 39, down by 12, and Dart throws short to what was intended for Bo Collins, and it's picked off by Kool-Aid at the Giants 45. And that officially is game over. Bo Collins just stopped his route. When Neighbors was ruled out for the rest of the season with the torn ACL, people then shifted the spotlight to guys like Slayton and Wandale and be like, you have to step up. Slayton, by default, has been a top receiver for the past, I don't know how many years before Neighbors, because we just didn't have, we just, couldn't figure it out. Couldn't get a top wideout. We would get a type wideout. I mean, after OBJ left, they brought in fucking Golden Tate, who hated Joe Judge with a passion. And you had Jason Garrett as the OC that didn't do him any favors. You bring in Kenny Golladay in 2021. He was a disaster. Losing Daniel Jones to injury and then having Mike Glennon and Jake Fromm be the guys throwing to Golladay didn't help his cause. And 2022 did not see the field. 2023, you decided to roll with Wandale. Darren Waller was your top guy, even though he's a tight end. He's basically your top target because, Waller fucking retires after the season. He hates it so much here. So you start to look at like the guys that did leave or retired. And, I had a lot of hate in my heart for Saquon for going to not for leaving, because I get it. Why would you want to be part of this organization? But I hated him for going to the Eagles. Then I hated Darren Waller for retiring because he inciting that he had to block on 3 straight run plays in Buffalo when it was cold. Ugh. And then he, of course, goes off and is having, a very productive season in the past 2 weeks for the Dolphins. Again, would Waller be putting up the kind of numbers that he is in Miami if he stayed with New York in 2024 and 2025? Probably not, because the organization sucks. Our franchise is in the turlet. The only one franchise that's worse is our roommates. Our neighbor, the Jets, are the only team that are worse than us. So I just don't understand Bo Collins one iota. Okay, you're down by 12 with the game not completely out of reach. You have been elevated from the practice squad. You're getting snaps. You're getting playing time. You have an opportunity to prove yourself and show yourself that I am an NFL wide receiver that's worthy of a roster spot, that can be productive, that can win you games. You get an offensive holding that smokes us, and then you don't run a route. How the fuck is that guy playing next week? Like, why are you even on? Like, why is he on the roster? Why is Jalen Hyatt on the roster? People saying there was so much talk about bring him home. when it comes to OBJ. Like, oh, we got to bring him home. And it's just like, for what? Like, he's not going to do hardly anything. But after watching what our wide receivers did against the Saints, it's like, all right, yeah, fine. I mean, Joe Schoen can't figure out the salary cap. So good luck finding the money to sign Odell Beckham Jr. because, our accounting services blow. So you're not even going to be able to afford them. But say you, by some modern miracle, our accountants figure it out and we're able to manipulate the salary cap to sign him. Would he do better than the current crop that we have? Maybe. I'm starting to open up to it now more than ever. It's like, if OBJ wants to be part of this shit show, okay, maybe he can ride off into the sunset and give us something. I mean, it's not going to be enough to win games, not with this attitude, this behavior that we have. I mean, I will not stop beating the fuck out of this dead horse. 26-14, you're down by 12 against a winless team in New Orleans. This is your opportunity to, if you really truly want to save your coach's job, this is your opportunity. And judging by the effort that we got from the players, nah, dude, this ain't it. Dan Duggan gave us a nice little "I told you so" post on X. He said, a lot of replies told me what Isaiah Hodgins can't do. I'll tell you what he won't do. Stop running his route, leading to an interception, or only run deep and have no chance of making a contested catch. So, when Neighbors went down for the year, Duggins suggested, and I agree with him, that the obvious immediate move is to sign Isaiah Hodgins off the Steelers practice squad, and we didn't. Why is that? I mean, even in recapping the biggest wins that we had and the success that we had in 2022, you look at like the touchdowns that Isaiah Hodgins was scoring. It was like he was scoring the game-tying, game-winning touchdowns in 2022 and 2023. And then I don't know what happened, over the course of 2023, but he must have done something really bad for them not to consider bringing him back. Because, he's for sure better than Bo Collins and Jalen Hyatt. Touchdown, punt, fumble, interception. I mean, yes, the backbreaker was the 12-play drive where we had 55 yards, and it looked like we were going to score at minimum a field goal to get us back in the game, and that's the backbreaker. But yet you had the opportunity on the very next drive when you go, 9 plays, 15 yards is insane for a drive. But, he threw the interception on that fourth down. 5 turnovers are the most by the Giants in a game since week 11 of 2014 against the 49ers. I remember that being a very disheartening loss that made me think that this might be the end for Tom Coughlin. According to NFL research, Giants are also the first team to commit a turnover on 5 consecutive possessions in a game since the Jets in Week 3 of 2016 against the Chiefs. So just as a refresher, 2014 Giants went 6-10, had a top 10 passing offense but a horrific rush defense in the next to last season for Tom Coughlin. 2016 Jets, the last team to do this, went 5-11, were 30th of 32 in scoring offense and 28th of 32 in scoring defense. So typically don't see a lot of really good playoff teams turning the ball over 5 consecutive possessions. Doug Analytics said the Giants lost a total of 28 expected points across 3 plays versus the Saints. The Skattebo fumble return for the touchdown was minus 12 points. Dart fumbling at the start of the second half was minus 6 points. Slayton fumbling at the end of the first half was minus 5.5 points. And the Dart interception, he's saying on that last interception, his second interception, Dart's second interception, where Collins just gave up on the route, was minus 4.5 points. Those 4 plays were the biggest swings in expected points for the Giants after the play. Jaxson Dart ended up completing 26 of 40 passes for 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, ran 7 times for 55 yards, and lost a fumble. So he had something like a 126 QB rating after the first half was done. He ended up with a 70 rating. Touchdown scorers in Week 5 included Evan Engram, Sterling Shepard, Saquon Barkley, Darren Waller, and Daniel Jones. Connor Hughes, who's getting a really interesting reputation SNY reporter said, honestly, if the Giants kept all the players they let go, they'd probably be really good right now. It's like, yeah, thanks, Connor. He's the one who wrote the softcore bromance novel after the Giants beat the Chargers last week that everyone ran wild with. And I saw Wesley Steinberg, I think, did a follow-up to that this week. That was pretty funny. Big Blue Film Room said Andrew Thomas posted a PFF grade of 89.9 on Sunday, highest of any Giant. And yeah, I mean, when he's healthy, he's the best in the league. And when he plays, we're better. Do we win more games? Yeah. Do we win enough games? No. I guess Joe Schoen can hang his hat on the fact that he extended Andrew Thomas, one of his rare wins. Giants Daily said this, and I had a similar thought. Live by the rookies, die by the rookies. So, Dart accounts for 3 of the turnovers, a fumble and 2 INTs. Skattebo accounts for the 4th turnover of 5. And I had a similar thought where before I saw this post, I was like, live by the sword, die by the sword. We were going to live by Cam and Dart, and now we're going to die by Cam and Dart. All that said, even after, 3 turnovers, you had a shot. You were still in the game. Defensively, before the game, Spencer Rattler talked about the Giants' defense, saying on the back end, they don't do as much as what we've seen from other teams disguise-wise. They've got the wrinkles and everything. They run that. What they do well. I don't know. It didn't seem like he was too rattled. Rattler was not rattled by our Giants defense, which is, a lot of people, anytime someone criticized the Giants defense after this game, they were immediately taken down, saying it's not the defense's fault. I don't blame the defense on this one. It wasn't the defense that lost us this game. And I'm here to tell you, well, they also didn't win the game for us. 3rd and 5 from the New Orleans 25. We're up 7-0. We're about halfway through the first quarter, a little under 8 minutes left. Rattler throws a deep pass to the left that's intercepted by Javon Holland at the New Orleans 47 in return for no gain. Who had the hit on that? Was it Nacho comes in and gets a hit on Rattler, or was it Darius Alexander? I think it might have been Darius Alexander. Gets pressure, gets a hit on Rattler. Rattler throws it up, and Holland has a pretty easy interception that he almost fucking dropped, which is crazy. And it's called back, negated by a defensive pass interference by Deonte Banks, who only played 8 defensive snaps. Penalty was worth 25 yards for the Saints. Giants in the first half racked up 6 tackles for loss, including a career first for rookie DL Darius Alexander, and we only had 1 in the second half. In the second quarter, 5.5 to play in the first half. 1st and 10 from the New Orleans 13. Again, this comes right after Daboll turtles and decides not to go for it on 4th down and has Gillen punt. And Rattler makes him pay with the deep pass to Rashid Shaheed for the 87-yard touchdown. The Saints had generated a league-low 4 plays of 20 or more yards through the first 4 games of the season. And we gave up an 87-yard touchdown. That touchdown was the longest Saints offensive play in 9 years. Ugh. Next Gen Stats said, they cream their jeans over these, but they said Rashid Shaheed reached a top speed of 21.72 miles per hour on his 87-yard touchdown catch from Spencer Rattler, the fastest speed recorded on an offensive touchdown this season. Yeah, so once he gets behind you, you're not catching him. So why did you let him behind you? I guess that's the big question. Like, why did you do that? Shouldn't have done that. Why'd you do it? Saints get the ball at their own 17 after Daboll decided to not go for it on 4th and 2. 2nd and 7, 2-minute warning, second quarter. We're up by 1. Rattler throws a deep pass right for Chris Olave. Penalty on Drew Phillips. Defensive pass interference. 19 yards. Next play, 1st and 10 from the Saints 39. Spencer Rattler. Pass incomplete. Deep right. Chris Olave. Defensive pass interference on Paulson Adebo. 3rd and 7. In the third quarter, a little over 10 minutes left at the New Orleans 49. We're now down by 2. Rattler passed deep right to Chris Olave, 17 yards, tackled by Paulson Adebo. 4th quarter, a little over 4 minutes, 4th and 5 at the Giants 40. Spencer Rattler, pass complete, short middle, Rashid Shaheed, 8 yards, tackled by Deonte Banks. So defense doesn't deserve a lot of blame, but there certainly were opportunities to get off the field. If you don't have defensive pass interference on those plays, is it going to be complete? Do we live to see another day? Instead, you're giving them massive chunks of yardage. 20 some odd yards, 19 some odd yards. That changes the field position and you lose that momentum. 7 for 15 on third down, that's not good. If we come up and make 3 or 4 more stops on defense on third down, are we losing the game? I don't know. Based on the offensive turnovers, yeah, I guess. That's the other thing about this is like just because we turn the ball over doesn't mean it's automatically points, right? We turned the ball over in Saints territory a few times. It's not like we turn the ball over in our own deep in our own territory where it's like the points are unavoidable. Defense can still make a stop against a really bad Saints offense. Jordan Renan said the whole experiment of playing Deonte Banks on third downs is not working. Cordell Flott has played well. It's the 4th time that Banks has been flagged already this season, which, given the amount of snaps that he's had, is just ludicrous. Christopher Ludicrous Bridges. And then Drew Phillips has got his 6th penalty of the season. That's the most in the NFL amongst defensive players. So Drew Phillips is like just a lightning rod, very polarizing. People are like, oh, he's going to be an all-pro, to get this guy off my team. It's pretty fun to watch. Marshall Green said through 5 weeks, Paulson Adebo is the 110th ranked cornerback, and Javon Holland is the 104th ranked safety by Pro Football Focus. Holy shit. Joe Schoen, those are 2 of your bigger free agent signings. And typically, when we see a big free agent signing, they always perform their best in year 1, and they're not even playing close to best in year 1. So I don't know, maybe that's the reverse of what's happening. We can expect better seasons in the future. The Giants Insider Podcast at Giant Insider said the Saints' offensive game plan today was to establish the run, which they didn't, and get the ball out of Rattler's hands quick, which they did. Bowen let Rattler have too many easy receptions in front of corners. Bowen should have played more man press, get up in receivers' grills, and try to take away quick hits. Jam receivers at the line, get physical, try to get receivers off easy in cuts, and sit in soft spots. The Giants held the Saints out of the end zone on 3 trips to the red zone. Very nice, very good. But it's the plays that get them into the red zone that are killing you. Spencer Rattler had not won a game as a starter. This is a lost season for the Saints. First-time head coach, and you couldn't get to him. You couldn't rattle him. You couldn't upset his rhythm. You couldn't make plays. David Syvertson at ourlads_Cy on X said Rattler had dropped back 27 times and been pressured 13 times, incredibly high rate, but 0 sacks. Pressure is fun, but not getting home is unacceptable for this front. Someone needs to make a play. No sacks and just 1 quarterback hit on Spencer Rattler, who was previously 0-10 as a starter. Doug Analytics said the Giants pressured Spencer Rattler on 55% of his dropbacks per next-gen stats. Rattler was sacked 0 times on 17 pressures. That's the most pressures by any defense without a sack this season. Giants Nation show at Giants Nation Pod said relayed the stats in terms of pass rush production versus the Saints, who were down their best offensive lineman, had a young offensive line that wasn't very good. Nacho had a QB hit and 2 pressures. Abdul Carter 3 pressures. Darius Alexander 2 pressures. DJ Davidson 2 pressures. Roy Robertson Harris 2 pressures. Kayvon 1 pressure. Burns 1 pressure. Darius Alexander ranks 3rd among rookie interior defensive linemen in pass rush win rate on the season with 12.3%, which is encouraging. Doug Analytics said Abdul Carter generated 6 pressures versus the Saints, a 26.1% pressure rate, with 4 coming in under 2.5 seconds per next-gen stats. 11 of his 14 pressures over the last 2 weeks have come in under 2.5 seconds. So I'm going to tie all that into a healthy little package, a nice little bow on top as a gift from me to you. You're welcome. I talked a lot last week about the amount of pressure that we were putting on Justin Herbert and how Burns, Kayvon, and Carter are among the tops in pressures, according to next-gen stats, across the league. Now, Pro Football Reference, different story. But they're on pace to be 1, 2, 3 in terms of pressures projected based on what they had done through 4 weeks. So, of course, they come out and lay a fucking egg against the Saints offensive line, which is not too much better than the Chargers offensive line, given, without Slater and Alt. And then the Saints without their best offensive lineman. And everyone's saying that the Giants' D-line was going to feast. And when you had Nacho, your backups, Nacho, Robertson, Harris, Darius Alexander, the rotating guys that are rotating in to get more pressures than the guys that are supposed to feast and are leading the league and they're supposed to be so good in terms of pressures. This is the same thing that happened with Leonard Williams. We are just talking about Leonard Williams, how did Joe Schoen trade him? Why would he trade him? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, because Leonard Williams got pressures. He didn't get the things that mattered most. QB hits, knockdowns, hurries, sacks. Pressures are good. Sacks is better, baby. And they're not getting sacks. They got pressures, but not sacks. So that's why I don't want to put, and I put that video out, that short from that segment that highlighted all the great stats about Burns and Kayvon and Carter when it comes to pressures. But it's also important to note that the pressures don't mean a whole lot if you're not hitting the quarterback, knocking him down, and getting sacks. For a quarterback to feel rattled and to feel true pressure, you can't just get close to him. You got to put a hit on him. You got to hit him. You got to knock him down repeatedly. And sacks, of course, that's the cherry on top. That's what gets you the big money, is the sacks. Leonard Williams had a lot of pressures and had a lot of high pressure rate, and maybe he's getting great grades from PFF. Where PFF, Pro Football Focus, and Next Gen Stats really fail us as a fan base, as a barometer, and as a measuring stick, is you can already see that Next Gen Stats is awarding way more pressures than Pro Football Reference. You're also seeing, in terms of PFF grades, like they're not exactly like airtight and locked down. A lot of times guys are getting PFF grades because it's like they're excelling in metrics that ultimately don't impact the fucking game. You can have 20 pressures in a game, but if you have 0 QB hits, knockdowns, or sacks, what that does? Okay, what are you defining as a fucking pressure? The pressures numbers were all great in a win where we feel like it contributed to the win, but you can start to see something similar happening that was happening with Leonard Williams in his last year, where it's like, okay, yeah, getting pressures, but not getting the hits to jar the quarterback and to make his confidence waver, knock him down, maybe give him some bumps and bruises so he's not at 100%, versus a pressure. It's like, all right, well, you can apply pressure and then they can escape the pressure and make a play. As far as pressures go, I think I've been fooled for the last time in my hopefully been fooled for the last time in my life. I'm not high on pressures. I'm high on QB hits, knockdowns. I guess hurry, like from my understanding, a pressure is less than a hurry, is less than a hit, is less than a knockdown, is less than a sack. I want guys that can get sacks, knockdowns, and hits. Hurries are great. Pressures are good. I want knockdowns, hits, and sacks. You can't get the sack. You got to be close enough to get a lick on the quarterback. And I understand that there are more rules in place and a lot more flags being thrown. I mean, the Saints had one of the most bullshit roughing the passer calls called on them when that guy hit Dart from behind. It's like, I guess from the referee's point of view, it was helmet to helmet, but I didn't see that. It's like, I think the Saints player could have done way more damage if he decided to lower his shoulder into the middle of Dart's back. He could have done what happened to Danny Dimes against the Dolphins in 2023, where he broke his neck. To me, Dexter Lawrence was sick all week. You have to figure that played a part in the defense not being as dominant as they were against like the Chargers. But it's still, to a T, it feels like this defense is still underperforming, which is crazy to say. I know, because it's not like we're not really getting blown out of the water. It's just like mistakes after mistake after mistake, not making plays, not forcing turnovers, bad penalties. It's like, can they clean it up and figure it out? And under Shane Bowen, no, I have no confidence in him to do that. Maybe with another DC that can come in here and play towards scheme and plan towards their players' strengths, mask their weaknesses, maybe we can see something better, because I legit thought this was a top 10 defense potential. And instead we're like middle of the road, bottom tier defense. And I know the offense is not helping them out too much, but we've seen worse offenses and we've seen the defense respond. So I forget who was saying it, but maybe it was Dan Schneider, but it's like, hey, Shane Bowen, Why are you calling the defense like you have an elite secondary and a poor defensive line when you have an elite defensive line and a poor secondary? Like you've got it reversed, my guy. You got it flipped. So no, Bones is good as gone. I don't see how anyone survives this season. Even if we fire Daboll, and I guess the plan is to promote Kafka to head coach, I don't see much changing in terms of wins and losses. And I think everyone's gone by the end of the season, Shane included. Special teams, not much to report. You know, Mekatemeni is not handling kickoff duties, and I think Jamie Gillen did a really good job in terms of kickoff duties. Pinned the Saints inside their own 10 a bunch of times. You know, they did not have good starting position for most of the game. Entering week 5, opponents had an average starting field position of 25.5 yards, the second lowest mark in the NFL. So I think, you know, don't fuck with that. Just let Jamie Gillen handle the friggin' kickoffs. And then Gillen also had both of his punts down inside the 20. So, I mean, we only punted twice, guys. And he did his job getting it, punting it inside the 20. And even on those 2 punts, shouldn't have been punts. There's a chance that this game we could have still lost and not punted, which I think has to be a record. I think that has to be a record to not punt and still lose the game. You want to talk about the 50 biggest blown leads? I had mentioned this before. You know, we were down 12 points to the Saints against a bad Saints team, and I thought maybe this could be one of the biggest comebacks. You know, I had some faith. We want to talk about blown leads. We were up by 11 in this game, and it qualifies. It's towards the bottom, but it qualifies as one of the biggest blown leads in franchise history. One of the 50 biggest blown leads in franchise history. Now you're saying, 50. It's not anything crazy, but considering we've played since 1925, 101 seasons, you know, you're looking at a healthy amount of games. So if you're in the top 50, that's no bueno. We have not, first of all, I think it should be pointed out that we have not had a lot of leads in the Brian Daboll era. So there's not a lot of leads to blow, but this qualifies as one of the top 50 biggest blown leads. Down, up by 11, and then losing by 12. That's pretty impressive. Some of the games I was looking at in terms of biggest blown leads, this goes back to what I was saying about Joe Judge in that 2020 season. There was a span of 5 games where we blew 3 leads in 5 weeks to lose. So you had the October 11th, we played at Dallas in that wild Cowboys game where we had like the fake punt that went for a touchdown that was called back because of some stupidity. We were up by 14 in that game. Let me rewind a little bit. The biggest lead that we've ever blown was 24 points, and we all know what game that was. I don't know that I need to bring it up again. Okay. It was not in the regular season. There's your hint. That was 24 points. That was the biggest lead. So this is not exactly top 10, but it's close. It's fringe. So 14-point lead in Dallas in 2020, October 11th, and we lose 37-34. Even despite blowing that lead and losing that game, I think people still felt a whole lot better about the Giants under Joe Judge than they did Pat Shurmur. What we didn't know is that trend would continue because October 22nd, 2020, 2 weeks later, we're up by 11 in Philadelphia, and we lost 22-21. And then it was 2 weeks after that. We're up 11 on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home, and we lost 25-23. Now, we had a pretty decent defense in 2020, where it's, you know, not, I mean, if I had to compare the 2025 to the 2020 defense on paper, you'd say the 2025 defense would fucking smoke the 2020 defense. But the 2020 defense was able to minimize the damage, not allow big plays, not allow big explosive plays, and they were great in the red zone, great on scoring percentage. So they're not allowing a lot of touchdowns. They're, you know, forcing field goals. They didn't get off the field, and they were on the field way too much. But in terms, there were certain metrics where the 2020 defense far outshines the 2025 defense. If the 2020 defense can manage to make some stops and not blow these leads, that's 3 blown leads in 2020 alone. We finished 6-10. If you don't blow those leads and hold on for the win, you're now 9-7, and you win the division You win the NFC East by 2 games, and then you go into Tampa facing Tom Brady and the Bucks. I believe I have to go back and look at the records to see what seed we would be. I'm pretty sure we would be the worst seed because Washington won the division at 7-9. They went to Tampa Bay, almost beat the Buccaneers in Tampa Bay. So I would feel pretty good about our chances going into Tampa and possibly beating Brady and the Bucks, even though they went on to win the freaking Super Bowl. So weird. Yeah, that was just my little diatribe on the 2020 New York Giants, where it's like we'll look back and say, 6-10, second place, but it was right there for the taking. And again, that goes back to a first-year head coach that we cannot repeat this vicious cycle of hiring once Daboll is gone, do not hire another first-year head coach. And I think that's the unanimous consensus amongst all Giants fans. Do not hire another first-year head coach. A lot of people suggesting John Gruden, and I would like to do John Gruden. But again, this Giants front office and organization is very caught up in optics and narratives and all that shit. And if we hire John Gruden, are you risking alienating the fan base even more because of that letter he sent to Goodell that leaked in 2021, which sucks. Because if that letter didn't exist and if that didn't get out, and I'm not condoning his behavior, I'm not saying it's right by any means, but like if that doesn't come out, that doesn't leak, or maybe he's not being that way, it's like a no-brainer. Yeah. And I guess a lot of other teams would feel the same way too. So I don't know. Maybe if Gruden goes on like an apology tour or something like that, I just don't see him doing that. And maybe he has made amends and tried to express his, regret. Because I do think Gruden would be able to turn this organization around. He fucking loves Jaxson Dart, dude. And I know Daboll is lusts after Jaxson Dart, but I think John Gruden also likes him as well. So it's like, now we have to start looking at who fits the bill in terms of former head coaches that had success as a head coach. I don't know that the list is that long. There are people talking about if John Harbaugh gets fired by the Ravens because the Ravens are playing so poorly. Obviously we would take a swing on Harbaugh, and if Mike Tomlin gets fired, you'd want to crack at Mike Tomlin. But other than that, it's like McDaniel's probably going to get canned. You're not going to go with McDaniel, I wouldn't think. So that'll be something that we have to look at probably after Thursday's game. And then some of the other blown leads that I was looking at that I thought were interesting, that 1996 season, we didn't. I think we were 5-11 or 6-10, but man, we had the opening game September 1st, 1996. I was there. This was against the Bills. We were up by 17 against the Bills with Jim Kelly at quarterback for Buffalo, and we ended up losing 23-20. We were up, and then later in that season against the Patriots, December 21st, 1996, we were up by 22. So it was 22-0, and we lost 23-22. I was at that game, and that sucked big time. That was against Drew Bledsoe. I had, I've said this before, but we had like we were like the very tippity top row in the 300 section, but behind one of the ed zones. So you got like a full all 22, which if I were to get season tickets again, I think I would be tempted to do that again. Because it's such a great like view of like what's happening. You can see things developing before that 100 tier level section. So, but yeah, those are two games that you probably could have won, and who knows, man? That 96 season might have played a little differently, and maybe Dan Reeves doesn't get fired. 6-10. So you win those two games, you go 8-8. I don't think it's good enough for the playoffs, but my God, that defense was so good in 96. Top 10 defense, and our offense just blew so hard. We would have gone 8-8, so we would have missed the playoffs by a game because the Vikings went 9-7 to get that last spot over Washington, who was also 9-7. So it's like, and Reeves got the boot. Expected win-loss was 6-10, so yeah, we were right there. But shit, man, you beat the Bills in week 1. Don't blow that lead. I mean, we got blown out the wazoo against the Cowboys in Dallas that next week, but we got to 4-5 going into week 11, and then lost to the Panthers, lost to the Cardinals. Ugh. Ended up beating the Cowboys at home 20-6 to go to 5-7. It's like you have a little opportunity there, and then you get shut the hell out by the Eagles in Philly 24-0. I mean, 8-8, and is there another game, another win you could have found in there? No. So we probably would have missed the playoffs anyway, because I can't there's not another win I can find in there unless can't find it. So just thought that was interesting. At 96 we had such a good defense and yet blew 2 leads. And you could, I mean, we always pin that the fault on the defense, but a lot of times in these blown lead games, blown lead losses, the offense just loses it. The offense gets out to a big healthy start, big healthy lead, and then just can't do anything after a certain time, certain drive. They just lose it. So it's not completely on the defense. You know, a lot of it's on the defense, but the offense not being able to add on to their lead affects things as well. Danny King at Danny King ________. Beating the undefeated Chargers but losing to the winless Saints is so on brand for the Giants. Yes. Anthony Rivardo, this is a classic Brian Daboll performance from the Giants. Giants Daily, losing to a starting quarterback who's 0-10 in his career is another awesome addition to the laundry list of embarrassing moments for this regime. Anthony Rivardo, again, the Giants under Brian Daboll, 19-36-1, so that's a winning percentage of under 350. 10-game losing streak in 2024, longest in franchise history. Offensive rankings in points per game, 15th in 2022, okay. 30th in 2023, 31st in 2024, and 28th in 2025. Penalties. This is the stat I was trying to throw out before that I couldn't remember if I had it or not. I do. Penalties under Brian Daboll, 6th in 2022, 26th in 2023, 18th in 2024, and 43 through 5 games of 2025, second most in the NFL. So, not great. Just like, we're not the fucking Raiders of the 80s and 90s or 70s where it's like we just rack up penalties and overcome them. Like, we're just not that team. Giants, so I decided to do a little research on Giants coaches in franchise history, just to get a sense of, like, has there ever been a Giants coach to have a losing record for 3 straight complete seasons? And also, has there ever been a Giants coach to not make the playoffs in 3 or more consecutive seasons? And I'll tell you what, the list is not long. There's only been one Giants coach with a losing record for 3 straight complete seasons. Tom Coughlin, who, quote unquote, stepped down or retired after 2015. In 2013, 2014, 2015, the last 3 seasons of his tenure as Giants head coach, he had losing seasons. 7-9, 5-11, 6-10, or 6-10, 6-10. And, the 2015 season sucks because it's like if you had any kind of defense, you would not have had a losing season. You probably would have gone to the playoffs. I thought at that time, all right, 3 strikes and you're out. I love Tom Coughlin. I'm happy that he was able to get us 2 Super Bowl rings, but it's like the charm has worn off. The magic has worn off. He doesn't have it anymore. He's lost control of the clubhouse. He doesn't have his pulse on the finger, blah, blah, blah. And then you have some people that say, no, we should have kept him for 2016, because if we had him for 2016, we still would have won the games we did, and we would not have done what we did before going into that wild card game against the Packers. You would not have had the boat picture. You wouldn't have had what happened before that game, and you probably would have won that game and then maybe gone on another run. So, a lot of people point to that as, I keep saying it. I keep seeing it on my timeline constantly. Oh, this is where it all went sideways. We shouldn't have done this. This is where it all went to shit. It was when he was forced to step down or retire or whatever. And it's like, maybe you're allowed to have 3 straight seasons of losing records, but he's the only coach in Giants history. We're talking 100+ seasons, only coach to survive 3 full seasons playing losing football. And rightfully so. He had the right to do that because he got us the 2 Super Bowl wins, because he got us multiple playoff appearances. He earned the right to do that. So That's it. Tom Coughlin. Giants coaches to not make the playoffs in 3 consecutive seasons. The list here, also not very long. Steve Owen did it twice. He did it from 1947 to 1949 in seasons 17, 18, and 19 of his tenure. So it's like, all right, well, you know what? I think you've earned the right to stay on after that. And then he did it again in 1951 and 1953. Which would be his last season with the Giants. Seasons 21, 22, and 23. So, yeah, I think you coach for 23 seasons. You're bound to have a couple slumps in there. I think that's okay in terms of precedence. Allie Sherman did not make the playoffs from 1964 to 1968, 4 seasons, seasons 4 through 8 of his tenure. Alex Webster did not make the postseason coaching as head coach of the Giants from 69 to 73. That was seasons 1 through 5. However, he was 9-5 in year 2, and he was 8-6 in year 4. Now, say in 2023, we don't go 6-11. We go 8-9, 9-8, and we miss the playoffs. 2024, we don't go 3-14. We go 7-10. We go 8-9, and just miss the playoffs. I think you'd have a lot more people in Daboll's corner pushing for another year after this, even the rough start to this season. The playoff format back then, not as expansive as it was now. So if you had the current playoff format, I'm pretty sure Alex Webster in year 2 and year 4 would have gone to the playoffs. But again, only 2 teams made the playoffs and they play in a championship, and that was that. So Dan Reeves from 1994 to 1996 was 1 win away from the playoffs in 94. So that one was it was 3 straight seasons where we didn't make the playoffs, 94, 95, 96, and we were very close in 94. And you don't blow the leads in 96, and maybe you have any kind of decent, halfway decent quarterback play in 96. Maybe you can muster another win and make the playoffs there. So, and then Tom Coughlin from 2012 to 2015, that played into it too, even though we played feels like we played well enough to make the playoffs in 2012, and the ball just didn't bounce our way. Lost on a lot of tiebreakers in terms of getting into the playoffs. That's probably has to play into it. And then 2015, record doesn't reflect it, but we should have been good enough, and we're in enough games to win it to make the playoffs there. So some noteworthy coaches that I wanted to point out during their tenure with the franchise. Bill Arnsberger had 2 straight losing seasons in 74 and 75, but was replaced by John McVay in 76 after starting 0-7. So didn't finish his 3rd season, but unless he goes and wins, goes 1-8 down did they have 14 games or 16 games then? I think they had 14 games. So he wouldn't have, it's still possible he could have finished with like a non-losing record, but he was trending that way. And then John McVay, 3-4 to finish out that 76 campaign. I think that was the first season at Giants Stadium. And then he went 5-9 in 77 and 6-10 78. So, he did have a losing record over 3 seasons. They just weren't 3 complete seasons. And then Ray Perkins avoided 3 straight seasons of losing records and not going to the playoffs by going to the playoffs in 1981 on the strength of really up-and-coming defense led by rookie Lawrence Taylor. Ryan Dunleavy, at Ryan Dunleavy on X, said the only thing that matters for the rest of the Giants season, keep the coach and let him develop quarterback to avoid repeating the cursed carousel of Daniel Jones, or decide that Brian Daboll loses too often and Jaxson Dart can survive. Anthony Rivardo made a great point replying and quote tweeting a user named Bateman at Dude of a Guy. So Bateman says to Anthony Rivardo on X, hate that argument. Hate the argument that it will stunt his growth, meaning firing Daboll now versus after the season will stunt Jaxson Dart's growth. If we bring in a good coach, why would it stunt Jaxson Dart's growth? Drake May just went through the same thing, and it's working well for him. And Anthony Rivardo agreed. He said, exactly. People point to the firing of Pat Shurmur as the reason that Daniel Jones was stunted. The hiring of Joe Judge was the issue there. Getting rid of a bad coach doesn't hurt a quarterback. Bringing in another bad one will. but Daboll is a bad coach. Firing him won't hurt anyone. It's the hiring of the next coach that could hurt Jaxson Dart. So all we have to do is get the next hiring right. That shouldn't be a problem, right? We got a pretty good track record when it comes to that over the past 10 plus seasons. Oh. Dan Schneider said, So you want to talk about coaching, right? I saw people saying, this loss is on the players, not on the coaches. Dan Schneider said Spencer Rattler was 0-10 as a starter in the NFL heading into the Week 5 game against the Giants. The Saints' offensive line was down their best player, already had a bottom 2 team in pass protection. Kellen Moore found a way. Saints defense ranked near the bottom in every category. Brandon Staley found a way. Brian Daboll cannot find a way. Shane Bowen cannot find a way. Mike Kafka can't find a way. They get outcoached all the time, and they have to depend on their players bailing them out. You want to know why Brian Daboll was fucking fired up after that win against the Chargers? A lot of people saying, because it shows that he was right. The quarterback was the reason, and the quarterback play is the blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if the quarterback is the reason why you're winning or losing, and all responsibility is falling on the quarterback, you're not a good coach. You know, you want to go back to you talk about Brady and Belichick. There are people that are now completely out on Belichick as a good head coach and saying it's 100% Brady's the reason why the Patriots were a dynasty. And then you look at Daniel Jones in Indianapolis. I'm going to bring this up every fucking week. Every week I'm going to bring this up. MYG Crush, who's understandably a huge Daniel Jones supporter. The Colts were down Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, and Adonai Mitchell in the doghouse and still functioning like a championship-winning team. Meanwhile, in New York. Yeah. I mean, I think the difference there between the Colts and the Giants is Colts have a really good offensive line, top 5 offensive line, a really good running back, and Jonathan Taylor. I'm not taking anything away from Cam Skattebo because he is top 3 according to PFF grades in both running the ball and catching the ball. But there are teams that are down receivers. Sterling Shepard with the fucking game-tying touchdown against the Seahawks. You had no use for him. You said he was not worth our time and he wouldn't be worth a roster spot. You don't think Sterling Shepard could play better than fucking Bo Collins and Jalen Hyatt? And you get to let him finish out his career as a Giant? What the actual fuck? Big Blue United said the Giants are a broken franchise. Seeing Saquon and McKinney leave and have massive success is one thing because everyone knew they were great. To see Daniel Jones be an MVP candidate after leaving the Giants shows that not only are the Giants an awful franchise, but Daboll clearly isn't a quarterback guru. I think that's been proven time and time again. Anthony Rivardo said the Giants have a 2-10 record since they benched and released Daniel Jones last season. I wasn't a Daniel Jones fan, but this Daboll Shane regime saved their jobs by pointing blame, saying the quarterback was the problem and they deserve a chance with their own quarterback. What's the excuse now? And, to the defenders, it's only been 2 games. It's only been 2 weeks. And, maybe Dart doesn't have to be in that position to throw those interceptions if Slayton holds on to the ball, doesn't fumble, if Cam doesn't fumble. Sure, it's not all on Dart. But I brought up those 4th and shorts near midfield because those are situations where you should go for it and show how much confidence you have in your quarterback, who's your guy. Maybe you didn't want to go for 4th and short at midfield with Daniel Jones because you didn't think he had it in him. You definitely didn't want to go for 4th and short with Tyrod Taylor or Tommy DeVito or Drew Lock because you didn't believe in them. Don't you believe in Jaxson Dart? So why are you not going for it on 4th and short from midfield when you're up, when you're winning, and put the nail in the coffin and, keep the Saints down, keep the momentum in your favor? Why wouldn't you go for the kill on a 12-play drive, 11-play drive towards the end of the 3rd quarter? Why wouldn't you go for the kill there? Instead, you let the clock run out, give the Saints a breather, Skattebo fumble touchdown. It's he's just not a good coach. He's not a good coach. I mean, you could give him fucking 100 games with Jaxson Dart. You're not going to win more games than you lose because he's not a good coach. And maybe he will, after he gets fired, he goes somewhere and he works his way back up and becomes a head coach again and he learns from all these mistakes he's made. It's rare. Shermer hasn't become a head coach again at the NFL level. Judge has not become a head coach at the NFL level. There are even some people saying that Joe Judge is responsible for how Jaxson Dart progressed and developed at Ole Miss, which is wild to think about. So there's a bright silver lining for Brian Daboll outside the Giants organization. Fuck has he done to prove that he deserves this job? I don't know. Doug Analytics said expected EPA per play rankings for weeks 1 through 5. This is before the Monday night game tonight. I'm recording this on Monday night. Sam Darnold plus 0.37. Daniel Jones plus 0.36. Jordan Love plus 0.35. Sam Darnold looks like a totally different quarterback from the limited amount of time that I watched him play with the Jets. He made a play against the Buccaneers where like he's getting guys draped all over him, and he's like manages to squirm free and finds an open guy for it might have been a touchdown or a big gain. Jordan Love, I know people have their thoughts and opinions about Jordan Love, but like he's put up some monster games before. He's also not looked so great. Daniel Jones, I know the schedule has not been that tough on them. But, he came back a little bit back down to earth against the Rams, where it's like he throws that pick at the end of the game when he had a chance to come back. Other than that, I don't think he looked that bad against the Rams. And then he comes out and they blow the doors off the Raiders to the point where they sat him to save him early in the fourth quarter because they were up so big. But I still believe that Daniel Jones is operating at a high level and is very successful. He's still making plays here and there, but he's operating and is so successful with the Colts because they are doing what we did in the first 7-ish to 9 games of the 2022 season. They're playing to his strengths, playing within his parameters. The run game was successful in 2022 for us, and we were able to utilize play action to our advantage. Colts, you have one of the top 5, if not the best, rushing attack in pro football. And so the play action is going to work regardless. And it almost doesn't matter who you have back there. Of course, if you have Anthony Richardson, that's a problem because he's unable to. But Daniel Jones has been, for the most part, extremely accurate over the first part of his career. We didn't see that as much in 2024. In like the latter part of 2023, or not the latter part, but like before he ended his season against the Raiders in 2023, you started to see him not be as accurate in 2023 and 2024. But 2022, very accurate. He always had like a high completion percentage, and if he wasn't completing, he was at least giving his receivers a chance. There were a few times in that Panthers game, that last Giants start against the Panthers, where it's like he had Malik Neighbors wide open and airmails it. It's like stuff like that is where you get into trouble with Daniel Jones, but he's been deadly accurate. The one play where they're in the red zone, shotgun formation, I think he fakes run left, kind of slow boots right to avoid the rush, and he has, I don't know if it was Pittman or Downs in the back of the end zone, wide open, but he still had to thread the needle, and it still had to be a tight throw, and he did. Marshall Green said Joe Schoen has signed 2 offensive skill position players in free agency that are still on the roster over the last 4 years, Devin Singletary and Chris Manhertz. Yuck. Singletary was the starter, lost his job to Tracy, and is probably 3rd on the depth chart once Tracy's healthy. And Chris Manhertz is your run blocking tight end, who's a great run blocker, but you get down big like you did by 12 to the Saints in New Orleans, and Manhertz is not playing a huge role. Gridiron Media had a pretty, they called it a hot take, and I'm here to say, hey, Gridiron Media, this isn't a hot take. It's just, and I don't even want to say unrealistic because that's negative. It feels like a dream. It just feels like there might be an organization out there that would do this, and we're not the organization to do it. So what does Gridiron Media suggest in his hot take? Giants should hire the next GM prior to the trade deadline. Let him start trading off pieces he doesn't want and get picks in return. 0 chance they do this, but I like the idea. And I'm here to say, yeah, dude, I fucking love the idea. The problem is you're putting a lot of faith in this front office in this Giants organization to think ahead like that. And it's like they're 2 steps ahead of you, and this is a chess move, not a checkers move. The Giants organization is not doing that because they are not going to put any time and effort into something when they have already granted Schoen and Daboll. They probably went to them and said, "We promise we'll give you an entire season to see what you got, and we won't pull the rug underneath from underneath you early in the season." I mean, I guess you could look at the Jets last year firing Salah after 5 games and going 2-3 and say, look how that worked out for the Jets, but it's the Jets. A. B. That would this kind of move would mean that the Giants have a GM in mind and are ready to pull the trigger. And I just don't think I think they're going to take their sweet time because they don't want to get it wrong and they're worried they're going to get it wrong again and set the franchise back. And so if anything, they're going to be scared about going to another GM thinking that, well, this one's Shane's better than Gettleman. I don't know. Personally, I would move on, and the earlier the move on that you can move on, the better. And the fact that if it would be foolish of them to not think that far ahead. Like the moment that John Mara said, we're sticking with them in January of this year, the moment he said we're sticking with them, that also needs to be the moment that you have to like put the feelers out there and do your research and homework on the next GM and coach because you know that like odds are this is probably not going to work out. But the issue is, I think from the organization standpoint, is like the moment you start doing that, I mean, the Giants, whenever this happens and there's like have a losing culture and you're losing and losing and losing, there are leaks to the media nonstop. Leak. And so if they went out and like, even if they in the dark of night under cloak and dagger were trying to look for another GM and coach, that shit would get out and leak to the press, and then it's like it's a disaster. So you would like in a tightly knit organization, you would have the ability to figure out who your next GM is or head coach is in that span. But it seems like I don't know, they probably didn't because they didn't want it leaked. And so for them to now can Daboll and Schoen today before a Thursday game. So, odds are if it does happen, which, low likelihood, it would come after a big, massive blowout at home to the Eagles where it's Eagles fans chanting and and then you have a longer runway to at least give whoever's the interim head coach enough time to prepare for the next, the Broncos in Denver. Ew. So as much as in a fantasy world, that would be pretty fucking cool. Can Daboll and Schoen now, Kafka's head coach, you've had this GM that no one knows about waiting in the wings. Is it possible that you go to what's his face? Brandon Brown? We have spent the last how many off seasons? Yeah, Brandon Brown, assistant general manager, like promoted to the position in 2022, working as director of player personnel and director of pro scouting for the Eagles. Is that a situation where it's like he's the interim GM? Let's see what you got, Brandon Brown. How much of what Schoen is doing is influenced by Brown? They seem to like him enough to protect him and not want him to leave. So you let Schoen walk, or you hand Schoen his papers with Daboll. You promote Kafka, and then you promote Brown. And the edict to Brown is, if you got moves, make them now. Do not concern yourself with the feelings of players anymore. Because that's the whole reason why we didn't trade Saquon and McKinney. I mean, the returns that you could have got for Saquon and McKinney and for a bunch of players at the trade deadline that we didn't pull the trigger on because why? We have faith that we're going to turn around the second half because we didn't want to hurt feelings. Let's win some games. Who is winning you games? Take a look at that. That's the fallout from Giants Saints. In terms of the Eagles preview, ooh, baby, Thursday night game. October 9th, 2025, 8:15 p.m. at MetLife Stadium, or Death Life, as OBJ calls it. Vegas has the Eagles favored by 7.5. I'm here to tell you that normally I would smash that button and take the 7.5 for the Eagles, but the Eagles are in a weird spot offensively. And maybe this is a case where Dexter Lawrence isn't sick all week. I imagine he must still be sick. But nah, I'd still take Eagles 7.5. I just think they're out for blood. And they're going to just like pull out all the stops and really bury the Giants. Over-under is 42. I do see this being an under. We've been under most of the season, except for that Cowboys game. You know, I think the red zone is somewhat better for us, and I think we can move the ball. I just don't think we're going to score touchdowns. I think we'll kick field goals. Eagles are going to move the ball and run up and down the field, but they also don't seem to be putting up a lot of points either. So I see this being like Giants 9 or 12 and Eagles in the high 20s. So it'll approach 42, but I think we'll still get the under. Jalen Hurts, obviously the leader in the clubhouse for the Eagles. 93 of 139, 889 yards, 7 touchdowns. Devontae Smith, 25 catches, 272 yards and touch, is the leading receiver. And Saquon Barkley, 83 carries, 267 yards, and 3 touchdowns, which is really crazy to look at. That's just to go from a 2,000-yard rushing season, and I'm sure history has shown that the season after a 2,000-yard season is a big step down for that running back, but to only have 83 carries and 267 yards, I think he's averaging it's definitely less than 4 yards a carry. It's closer to 3 yards a carry. So, if this were a different Giants defense, the one that we all thought it was on paper, you'd feel a lot better about this game, but I just don't. I just don't. I think that, I've said this I said this versus the Chiefs and the Chargers, 2 of the better teams in the AFC and the AFC West. We'll keep it close for a half, maybe 3/4, and then the other team will pull away in the fourth. I feel like it's lining up for that in this game, where it's like, maybe we keep Barkley in check for a half and then we just get tired and worn down in the second half. And that's when Barkley explodes and goes off for like a 60-yard touchdown run to make his numbers look better than they looked live. Last 5 matchups, we lost to not just backups, but backups of backups on January 5th, 2025. Final game of the 2024 regular season, 20-13. I think we had a chance to make a stop and then go back on offense to potentially tie the game, and we went off sides, jumped off sides, and gave them a first down. That was the end of the game. October 20th, 2024, we got shellacked 20-3. Saquon went off. Jones was benched in that game. Drew Lock came in and was awful. January 7th, 2024, that's where we got the win, 27-10. And you thought, okay, 2023 was crazy. It sucked. Gave up a lot of sacks, but at least we finished with a win over the Eagles team that had something to play for in that game. Ended up getting down by so much that they benched a lot of their starters to preserve them for the playoffs. And then their fans, Eagles fans, showed up to Tampa with bags on their heads for a playoff game. Unreal. That game, looking back on it now, you're like, it was Sterling Shepard's last game, and it's just like, I couldn't have been more wrong about the future of the franchise. I was like, wow, so proud of Brian Daboll for keeping this team together and for fighting through adversity and managing to get 6 wins after what was such a horrific start. And it was just more of the same in 2024. And then January 21st, 2023, it was the playoff game, that divisional game against the Eagles in Philly. We got trounced 38-7. And even then, I said, the Eagles are on the decline. The Giants are on the incline. So look out next year. So completely wrong. Eagles now lead the all-time series 96-89. And that is, it's basically been the last decade plus where they just have owned us. They are 11th in points scored per game, 16th in points allowed per game. They do have a +4 takeaway differential, which is 7th best in the league. They are 31st in passing yards per game and 25th in rushing yards per game. Okay, you look at that and you're like, oh, I understand why Eagles fans are so up in arms about this team. They're 4-0. They should have been 5-0, but allowed the Broncos to come back in that fourth quarter for their first loss of the season. But to see them averaging less than 300 yards per game is, they're 15th in passing yards allowed per game and 21st in rushing yards allowed per game. So, you know, they're not as invincible as they were in 2024. It seems like they're trending more towards what happened in 2023, but, you know, I mean, our numbers are just so poor across the board. The only thing I can think about is that maybe we can get a run game going, you know, because we're 12th in rushing yards per game, and they're 21st in rushing yards allowed per game. So maybe we can run the ball on them, control the clock, keep Hurts off the field. It just feels like it's going to be a very low scoring affair where it's like a lot of running, a lot of rushes, kind of a boring game, to be honest. Eagles offense is a net average. Their passing offense is below average, which is why you have the likes of A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, you know, complaining about their role in the offense and how unproductive they've been. The rushing offense, despite not having a lot of yards per game, has the 5th highest expected points contributed by offense across the league. The Eagles have the 4th fewest total yards on offense, despite slightly below average total plays. They have the 4th fewest yards per play in the league, but they also have the fewest turnovers. They only have 1 turnover, and it's on a fumble lost, 0 interceptions thrown by Jalen Hurts so far, and that goes a long way. It's probably, you know, if you don't turn the ball over at all in New Orleans, you probably win that game for the Giants. Eagles offense has the 3rd fewest total passing yards, and they have lower net yards per passing attempt than us at 25th of 32. We're 24th. Eagles offense has the 2nd fewest first downs by passing, and then tied for 5th in the most first downs by rushing. So, you know, and that makes sense when you're so good at running the ball, especially in short yard situations, goal to goal situations, courtesy of the tush push. Why would you need to pass? You know, they are basically getting into downs and distances on 3rd and 4th down where it's like, we can just tush push and get the first down. They're tied for 5th for the most rushing attempts, 22nd in total rushing yards, 4th lowest rushing yards per attempt. Like I said, Barkley's, I think he's averaging like 3.3 yards a carry, so it's not like he's busting out for any long gains. Their Eagles offense is tied for the 4th most rushing touchdowns. Again, when they get inside that 5, it's like an automatic rushing touchdown for them. Their scoring percentage, which is the percentage of offensive drives that end in a score, is 34.6, which is 26th in the league. And they are only 2 spots higher than the Giants, or 28th. But this is where we differ. The turnover percentage. The Eagles offense is the best in the league. Only 1.9% of offensive drives end in a turnover. And their red zone percentage is unreal. 92.3% red zone percentage. They have scored touchdowns on 12 of 13 red zone trips. The Giants are dead last in comparison. Eagles offense is 22nd on 3rd down conversion, which that might be a little surprising, but then they're 71.4% on 4th down. So it's essentially, it's like they know that if they don't get it on 3rd down, they're going to get it on 4th down. And so I think they don't really try to go too far beyond the sticks because they're like, oh, we'll just go for it on 4th down. You know, there's not that pressing need or urge to get beyond the sticks on 3rd down. And they also have the 3rd fewest plays per drive. Eagles offense, if there ever was a time for the Giants defense to really step it up, it's just after that Saints game, it's like, I know it wasn't a horrible game from the Giants defense, but that was a game where you were expected to really shine and stand out and take over the game, and you didn't. You just didn't. If you're putting up that kind of effort against Spencer Rattler, I can't imagine what they do against Jalen Hurts, because we saw what happened against Jaden Daniels. You know, Justin Herbert, you managed to corral and contain, but you didn't do that against Jaden Daniels, even though you had a spy on him. I think Jalen Hurts is going to do the same thing. I think he's going to hurt us with his legs yet again, unless Bowen figures it out. And we know he can't. The Eagles defense is allowing the 9th highest rushing yards per attempt and the 5th most first downs by rush. So there is an opportunity here for our run game to get right. And knowing that we are going to go to the run and try and take aim at their weakness, maybe this is an opportunity to really highlight our play action packages. It feels like we could start the game similar to how we started the game against the Saints, where we're doing Belly and Theo are both starting the game, and you run out of that 12 personnel or whatever, 2 tight end set for the first 2 drives and ground and pound, but also play action. And maybe that's how we start the game. And then you got to hope that once you get the lead, you keep it and you don't turn the ball over. And that's how you win the game. Your defense just stands strong and doesn't allow points in the red zone. But this Eagles team is so good in the red zone that it's like it's one of those games where I just see it's like if we're competitive, it's not going to look that way in the final score, in the box score, because the Eagles will score touchdowns, whereas we'll kick field goals. You'd like to think that things would be different with Dart, and they have been in the red zone. But, after those first 2 drives, we did not get in the red zone again until Cam's fumble. So the Eagles defense is 2nd in first downs by penalty, right behind us. So maybe this is another opportunity for us to push the ball down the field, hoping for a lot of defensive pass interference, hoping for a lot of holding. Like if they are, are they going to play man? If so, let's take our shots. And if they play zone, I don't know. Would Dart play well and throw well against the zone, or will he be duped by the zone and it will result in some turnovers? Eagles defense is 21st in scoring percentage. We're 26th, and they are 19th in turnover percentage. We're 28th. So it's not like they're forcing a lot of turnovers. They're just, the offense is not turning the ball over. They have like a net average defense. It's so wild that they're 4-1, and it's like they're not really excelling in most categories. They've allowed the 5th highest average depth of target. So this is where, like I said, I think you need to take more shots down the field, knowing that, I don't want to see a lot of these fucking bubble screens to Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't want to see like a little 4-yard, 5-yard hitch from Wan'Dale Robinson. I want to see Wan'Dale Robinson going up the seam. I don't know that Slayton's going to be healthy for this game. If he's got a hamstring, I don't think he's not going to be 100%. So I would immediately rule him out as a factor in this game. So now you're down to Wan'Dale, Bo Collins, Jalen Hyatt, and I saw someone say that Gunnar Olszewski needs some reps, and I'm here for it. I hate that expression, but like I agree. Gunnar Olszewski needs to get some more playing time for sure, because I know he'll play better than Bo Collins and Jalen Hyatt. I just know it. I know it. Maybe he's not getting separation like them, but I know that he is more sure-handed than them, probably runs better routes than them, and has the potential to give you some yak, just based on looking at how he returns kicks and punts. Like the guy is elusive and can make you miss. So I'd like to give Gunnar Olszewski a chance. And is Isaiah Hodgins still available? Like just throw him in the mix. Why not? Giants Muse threw this out there. Now this stat was thrown out there before the Week 5 game, but Brian Burns had 5 sacks by himself, and the Eagles as a team had 5 sacks before going into that Denver game. They got 2 more against Denver, so they now have 7 sacks, which is tied for the 3rd fewest in the league. So we're so accustomed and used to the Eagles defense getting a lot of pressure and getting to the quarterback and wreaking havoc for the likes of Eli Manning, Daniel Jones. Doesn't seem like that would be the case here, especially with Andrew Thomas looking healthy and playing well. Jermaine Illuminor probably had his worst game of the season against the Saints. I think he had like 3 penalties against them. One of which brought a play back. There were a couple where it's like it killed some drives. So Illuminor, not his best game. Can he bounce back and play like we know he can at a higher level? You just have to worry about the interior offensive line. Can they hold up against that interior Eagles defensive line? Prob's not. But the thought there is that you're not as averse to throwing down the field and taking your shots against this Eagle pass rush like you have in past years. So that being said, the secondary, I think Eagles fans will agree the secondary is playing better than they have in the past. Second lowest completion percentage in the NFL. They have allowed the fourth fewest passing touchdowns, tied with us. They are tied for fourth with us in passes defended, and they are top 10 in passing yards per attempt. They're not allowing a lot of completions, but when they do allow completions down the field, it's down the field. So they've allowed the fifth lowest QB rating, 80.7, the fourth lowest sack percentage, but they have the fourth lowest sack percentage. That should bode well for us in terms of Dart's not going to be under too much pressure, and it can at least take that extra split second to find the open guy down the field. Eagles defense is top 10 in terms of pass defense by expected points contributed. So better against the pass than they are against the run. Still not completely shut down pass defense. So it doesn't feel like, but this is a case where they're coming off a really bad loss that they probably should have won at home. There's some discord, some conflict in the clubhouse and locker room with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith in terms of how the offense is operating. Saquon's been bottled up, so this does feel like the kind of game where they just go off and explode and have a field day. But it's not quite the same team that they were last year. So tied for seventh in the most rushing yards per attempt. I don't think Tracy will be back, so you'll probably see a healthy dose of Cam Skattebo, or you should. Did we abandon the run too prematurely against the Saints once we started losing? Maybe. Once we got back to feeding Cam Skattebo in that towards the end of that third quarter, started to move the ball a little bit. And you can see, that's how we succeed. We're not succeeding by the 4 wide, 5 wide, run and gun, throw the ball 40 times a game. That's just not how we win games. We have to get back to a balanced attack, play action, success on the ground. So if we can do that and stick to that, even when we get down by a score and not immediately default to throwing the ball without any play action, then this game will be a lot closer than we all think it's going to be. Eagles defense is 23rd by expected points contributed by the rush defense, and we're 31st. So yeah, it's there, and just have to figure out, you can't just cam up the middle, cam up the middle, cam up the middle, get a little more creative with it, maybe with some misdirection and whatnot. But the Eagles are 10th. Eagles defense is 10th in third down conversion, 3rd and 4th down conversion, and 3rd in red zone conversion. So those are the keys, right? In terms of what wins games and what loses games, not turning the ball over and converting in the red zone, converting on 4th down, converting on 3rd down. And the Eagles do that on both sides of the ball. We don't, or we haven't for most of the games, with the exception of 3rd down conversion for the offense in the Cowboys game, in the Chargers game. But then, it's we can't get the offense and the defense on the same page in the same game. If you can convert on 3rd down and 4th down in the red zone on offense and defense, odds are you're winning the game. In terms of special teams for the Eagles, they have not missed a field goal yet, 14-14, and they have not missed a PAT, 14-14 there. They have the 3rd lowest touchback percentage and the 2nd highest yards per punt, 4th highest net punt yards, but the 2nd lowest punts percentage of punts inside the 20. So I don't think you're going to see any kind of big returns from us in the punt game, if we even get them to punt, which maybe we will, but you got to hope that once they get to midfield, they don't go for it on 4th down, and then they are forced to punt, and then they can't get it inside the 20, I guess, there. But the 3rd lowest touchback percentage, so Gunnar Olszewski and Deonte Banks should be your kick returners, I would think, and they might be able to get some success there in terms of returning kicks. Dan Duggan, this was in response to the Diana Rossini report that A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are frustrated with their roles in the Eagles' offense. Multiple sources tell her. One is venting more publicly than the other, but both wanting something to change, specifically in the red zone. And, okay. Dan Duggan quote tweeted that and said, Philly has won 20 of its last 21 at the time games. It's now 20 of 22 games, but including the Super Bowl. Talk about first world problems. Yeah, dude. I'd love to be 4-1 and bitching about lack of productivity. So that's the Eagles preview. I don't have us winning this game. There's also the John Mara being diagnosed with cancer. I wonder how that is impacting operations within the building. Is it a case of he's dealing with cancer? I don't know that he really wants to deal with firing a head coach and a GM while he's being diagnosed with, so it does seem like, all right, well, it's a lost season. Let's just let him play it out, and then we'll deal with it once Mara's in a better place health-wise. I don't know. A lot of speculation coming out of me, but you would think if we get blown the fuck out at home to the Eagles on Thursday night, that would be the window or the door opening for change and just get a head start on things and really, really get a head start on things. But I don't know. You would then be 1-5 going to Denver. I've said it. I've said this. If it's going to happen in season, the latest it could happen would be at the bye. That seems to be when teams take a step back, take the bird's eye view, really reevaluate everything, and that's not coming until week 14. So it probably, the latest in season firing would be after week 13. If you're Jesus Christ, if you're 1-12 after week 13, why even? What's the point? Just let's get a move on, get a head start. So, to me, it doesn't make much sense to keep them on as soon as we're eliminated from playoff contention. I don't see any reason why you would keep them on after that. For what purpose to keep? I don't know. It would solely strictly be about not ruining Jaxson Dart, and it's just I don't know. How many wins would you need to get into the playoffs? Right now, you have the Niners at 4-1, but they are banged up. They escaped from that game with LA with the win because the LA inexplicably decided to go for the touchdown instead of the chip shot field goal to tie it up on that Thursday night game. Fucking, oh my God. Mac Jones was just puking on the field. I've never seen a quarterback, and I've seen Joe Montana get knocked out against the Giants in the playoff game in 86, where he looked like he was in shambles, needed help to get off the field down the tunnel. Mac Jones looked worse than that in that game against the Rams. His pants were, you could see it, his pants were all undone and falling off his body, and his shirt was torn and ripped, and his helmet was on askew. It was just holy fuck. And then he puked on the field, and I was like, whoa, hope he's okay. So maybe the Niners should be getting Kittle back soon. I don't know how long Purdy will be out, but Mac Jones looks like he's banged up, so who knows how long they can survive at 4-1. Rams are 3-2, but you got to feel like they always just figure it out and they'll make the playoffs. So I can't see them getting less than 10 wins. Yeah, so we're already at 1-4. We're looking at 1-5 against the Eagles on Thursday night. You're then looking at 1-6 in Denver, 1-7 at Philly. If the 49ers continue to go down this road of just everyone getting hurt and Mac Jones and Brock Purdy are both out, maybe you sneak a win there, but I think that's 1-8. At Chicago is the only other game I had where I think they have a good chance of winning. So then you go 2-8 going and then hosting the Packers. To me, it's once you get to 9 or 10 losses, your playoff probability is so low. A lot of people were saying if we went 0-5 to start the season and dropped to the Saints, he would have been gone. But is that Chargers win? I just think once you go, these next 3 games are just going to be so bad. We're for sure going 1-7, and then you have to hope that, I don't know what you were expecting, but my guess is if you drop to the 49ers and Bears to go 1-9, why prolong the inevitable? You'd have to win out and go 8-9 and get some help to make the playoffs. Good God, can you imagine if that happened? If we went 8-9, winning 8 to finish out winning 7 to finish out the season. That means you're saying that we're going to beat the Packers, Lions, Patriots, Commanders, Vikings, Raiders, and Cowboys. Well, I guess the Raiders could be another win. And you might be able to sneak one against the Cowboys because they're just so bad defensively. Let's throw in our positive, optimistic hat here for a second. Rosiest of rosy glasses. Maybe you sneak a win against the 49ers. They did lose to the Jaguars. Maybe you go into Chicago and beat the Bears. I don't see you beating the Packers, even though the Cowboys tied them. So at home, no, I can't. Lions, you're not beating them in Detroit. Patriots in New England just beat the Bills in Buffalo. So I don't think that's a win. Commanders, we play them close, but I just don't see that happening at home. Vikings, you might get a win. Raiders, you might get a win. Cowboys, you might get a win. So we're saying Bears and 49ers, maybe. So that's 3 wins. And then Vikings, Raiders, Cowboys. So 6 wins. That's the ceiling right now, 6-11. And that's not going to get you in the playoffs. This is not 2020. 6-11 is not going to get in the playoffs. So I've been dead set on this decision since middle of last season, but they keep prolonging the inevitable for whatever reason. So it's very possible that you can get 6 wins, but that's not going to get not going to get you in the playoffs. And is that progress? Well, it's more wins than you had in 2024, same wins you had in 2023. That's going to suck if we go 6-11 and they keep them. That's going to really stink. All right. So that's the ep. Spent way too long on this loser franchise. Loser team. Losers. Next up, I still owe everyone a Mets season in review. I just did September last time. That went way too long. But there's a lot of like interesting stats that came out of the season. And then of course, they also got rid of like basically their entire coaching staff minus the first base coach and the manager. So that's an interesting move. And yeah, so we'll go over a little bit of baseball in the next ep. And then I have a Superman movie review, all dialed up, ready to go. I don't know if I'm going to do any more episodes about life. Life has really stunk. It's just not great. Maybe I can do like a, I don't know, condensed version of the summer. But Fantastic Four, First Steps will be the next movie review after Superman. And then I was thinking about maybe doing a review of Alien Earth, but I don't know. It had so much potential to be one of the best shows of the year, and it still is one of the best shows of the year, but I feel like it kind of fell flat towards the end with the finale and some of the decisions that were made. But that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Adios, muchachos.